Yeah, here we go.
We're live! Welcome everyone to day one of bLU Talks Amplify Your Message. I am your host, Laura Lake, and this time it's super fun. This whole week, I have different co-hosts every day. And today, my lovely co-host, her name is Tracy Valko. Tracy, just tell us a little bit about you before we get started.
Well, morning, everybody. I'm super excited, and thank you, Laura. This is going to be, I know, a very jam-packed couple of hours seeing amazing guests. So again, my name is Tracy Valko. I owned Valko Financial, a mortgage brokerage for the last 25 years, and I'm passionate about education and speaking in the community. And every event I can to kind of spread the word of resilience, women leadership, pivoting in today's change, you name it, I can speak about it.
Sweet. Okay. So for those who don't know, bLU Talks Amplify Your Message is about talking to all of these lovely entrepreneurs, like our next guest, Lisa, where we learned that there's not just one way to amplify your message. There's not one way to do something in business. It really is understanding you and how you like to do it. So all of our guests, we're going to be asking them questions about how they have chosen to share their message and how that works for them. So yes, Lisa is our first guest. I'm going to bring you up on stage. Welcome to the stage. Lisa, I will say that the last time we had a lovely conversation was the speaker boot camp a couple months ago. It was in February. My mind's kind of a blur with the move. But it was lovely because you were one of the what's the word? The coaches, the 15-minute laser coaching coaches. So I got to see you behind the scenes, and it was a lovely time. So Lisa, tell us a little bit about you, and then we will pick your brain for those gems.
Well, thank you. It's so good to see you, Laura, and meet you, Tracy.
Yes,
Um,
thanks.
let's see. I am a mindset coach. So I am actually a certified hypnotherapist. I have my master practitioner in neuro-linguistic programming, also known as NLP. Um, so why I started doing this, and I'm also a why coach, helping people discover their why and their purpose. But why I started doing this was from the time I was very young, I had undiagnosed learning disabilities. And so in kindergarten, everyone could read, could write, to do their math, and I was completely lost. And I learned to give my power away to everyone who I thought was smarter than me, which was pretty much everyone. And I went through life just kind of floating around. And I got married young, had my children, and by the time I hit the age of 38, I was suicidal. I had a nervous breakdown. I didn't want to be here anymore. Didn't understand my purpose, and I was going to therapists, I don't know, 2, 3 times a week, and no one was helping me. And then someone suggested a hypnotist, and I was like, a hypno what? Don't they make you quack like a duck? And I tried it, and it changed my life. And that has set me on this journey of learning in depth about the subconscious mind and how we're programmed. So that's a small introduction.
Okay, now I
Wow.
want to know.
So do I. I got so many questions about that.
I know, like, did they make you quack like a duck? I have to ask.
No, you know what's interesting, and I learned this very early on. There's a couple different types of hypnosis. So there's stage hypnosis, and then there's the therapeutic hypnosis. So I don't even know how to do that. That's a specific training. So, and I always have to set people at ease because we as humans actually go into the state of hypnosis 7 to 10 times a day.
Wow.
Have you ever daydreamed?
Mm-hmm.
All the
Yeah.
time.
You ever miss an exit when you're driving?
Yes, a
That's
lot.
that's that's all it is, and people get nervous because they think I'm gonna be able to control them, but what I'm actually doing is, bringing people into just a lower state of consciousness where more things are programmed, because when we're born, there's 5 major brain frequencies. So when we're born, we're in something called delta, and that's a really big wave. And if you think about newborn babies, what they have to learn, it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Smell, sound, taste,
Mhm.
emotions, color, fine motor, gross motor. And then as they get into elementary school, they start getting into something called theta, which is another wide wave. And so if you think about all the things that we learn as children, that becomes our programming. So we are literally walking around programmed. So your socioeconomic status, your religion, what country, your culture, any traumas, all the belief systems of your parents. You can even inherit belief systems. I've worked with people going back up to 10 generations with people.
Wow. And
Yeah.
isn't it they say like once you get into your like 40s or 50s, if you haven't dealt with what you maybe went through as a child, like childhood trauma, it kind of hits you, right? In some aspect, whether it's work or personal, right?
Well, we know the term midlife crisis,
Hmm.
right? So we come along in our life. Yeah, we can have multiples. Uh, and there are things in our lives that we really attach ourselves to, right? And we become so attached to it, we don't know who we are without it. And so that's part of our programming. So many people walk around in fear because who am I without this belief system? So it becomes the devil you know. And I will tell you, I had this belief system that I could never be alone, I could never take care of myself because I wasn't smart. And so I was in a marriage of 29 years. And I didn't think that I would ever be able to do anything with my life. So the idea of finally overcoming that fear and going off and being on my own and I loved those years. I have no regrets. I loved being a mom. I loved doing my work, but this part of my life belongs to me, right? Where I finally step into my voice and get to figure out who I am and using those tools to help others.
So how long have you been doing this?
20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm giving away my age now.
No, it's so good. No, that's
It's
so good.
22 years to be exact.
And I've spoken to a lot of women where again they get in this, and again, if you're a mom or you've been in a long-term relationship, you kind of get in this path where you're just focused on that, right? Like you don't really, especially for women, right? We're just doers. We
Right.
don't really look at, okay, there is something else out there. I want to go back to your hypnosis because I'm intrigued by that. So you went through that. It's like, was it just like a one-time thing you went through and it was just, or like, was it a series of times that you went and had that done?
So the woman who I worked with was helping me uncover belief systems, right? And the programming. And it's not just one, it's layers, right?
Oh, yes.
And it's every single thing that's ever happened to you in your life that reinforces. So if you think about, are you familiar with the law of attraction? It's like when we have that belief system inside of us, so then we attract everything that matches that. So if we don't believe that we're smart, then we keep attracting situations that reinforce that. So therefore, it must be true.
Yeah.
So it was the whole process of years of not only digging in my own stuff and pulling it up and looking at it. People will call it the shadow work, learning to love the shadow, the parts of us that we reject that are maybe like parts of our family members that we don't like, but are in us that we have to learn to love and accept. So many things, when you think about religion alone, many people who grew up in religious or cultural, very strong cultural backgrounds, if you fall in love with someone outside that religion or cultural background, there can be major backlash for that,
Yep.
right? And then you can possibly lose your tribe. Or if you start to think outside that tribe, because once you leave that tribe, then it doesn't feel safe. It takes a lot of courage and strength to leave when you don't feel like you belong. And that was for me most of my life, was not feeling like I belonged anywhere.
Yeah.
Which gets to the why, because when I took my why test, when I learned about the 9 different types of why, I discovered, hello, my why is challenge, which means people think outside the box. They challenge conventional thinking. So my whole life, I was challenging things, thinking I was broken. There was something wrong with me because I didn't see things the way that other people did.
Yeah.
And once I realized that challenge was my gift, my world exploded because now I owned it and I honored it. So it's like been 22 years of, imagine being fractured and all those little pieces were sent out into the universe, pulling all of those pieces back. I'm still pulling those pieces back. That will be for a lifetime. But now I find that I do it more in a way of using that wisdom to help others. Because my goal was to become the person that I was looking for 20 years ago to help me.
Oh, Lisa, you are speaking my language. It's like everything that you just said is like it encapsulates everything that I stand for. Because I was just like you, Lisa. I thought that I couldn't be the person that I wanted to be because I was that challenger. I had a friend of mine tell me, she's like, "You're an Aquarius," and I knew nothing about what that meant. She's like, "That means you're a rebel." And in my mind, the word rebel meant somebody who's bad. And so when she called me a rebel, I was like, no, I'm a good girl. I'm a good girl, as we all do.
Right.
It changes that perspective when you understand what that means. And being
Right.
rebellious was that I wanted to question, I wanted to challenge. So I want to thank you right now, Lisa, for being that challenger.
Well, thank you. Challenge people are misunderstood. We're deeply misunderstood. And one of the things that I learned was challenge people, and also another one we call is better way people. They're the visionaries. They're always looking for a better way.
Mm-hmm.
So as a visionary, right, you see things that other people don't see.
Yeah.
And when you see things that other people don't see, you have to wait for them to catch up. And sometimes that catch up can take months, years. My daughter and I had this conversation recently, and she said, "Mom, sometimes I think you're 1,000 years ahead."
Maybe.
Maybe. But it's like when you see things so clearly and it's in your face and other people don't see it. But that's what makes me a really good coach, because I see it in other people before they see it. And then I can plant the seeds and guide, because it's not my job to fix anyone. It's their job to fix themselves, but it's giving people tools that they can use for themselves. And what's amazing is knowing the different brain frequencies and where our programming is. I can take people back to the root cause of when that belief system came in. And sometimes it's said before you can inherit it. They did a study with mice where they took mice and they shocked them every time they smelled a particular smell until they associated it.
Yeah.
And then what happened was their grandpups, just by the smell, would run. So we have those same reactions. So if you have a great, great, great grandparent who experienced extreme trauma or scarcity, starvation, went through depression, those, it doesn't change your DNA, but it changes the way your DNA expresses itself. And so we come into the world with this programming already there, and then it can take one event to trigger it. And now we're running around going, I don't even know why I had this, because we never had starvation in my household. Never had to want for anything, yet I'm always walking around with this belief of lack. And so all the therapy in the world not necessarily is going to get you to that event to clear it. And that's why I love this work so much.
So can I ask you a question then, Lisa, when you're doing this work with people, are you finding that when you're going through this, most people are dealing with, previous trauma, or like you said, it could be inherited coming in? Is that where you're finding when they open that up, it's able to help them find out, okay, this is like why I'm here, where my purpose is? Does it direct them, like once they're able to clear that?
Exactly. So I do something called timeline work, and it's really time travel for your emotions.
Okay.
So I actually take people back, because you can't change what happened, but you learn to change the way you think about it, the way you see it. And when you're traumatized at 4 years old, you see the world from the age of 4, and then your 4-year-old is running you. So by going back to the 4-year-old and talking to that 4-year-old, updating the 4-year-old on what's happened and heal it, and then give it a new job, right? And now, because they're always like, I'm exhausted. For instance, in the case of food, let's say the parents were really, really busy and didn't have enough time for this child. So at 4 years old, they found food was nourishing. So food becomes love. So that's the 4-year-old's decision, not the adult's decision. So if you go in and explain that to the 4-year-old, heal it and give it a new job, and then it's like, okay, now I don't have to eat ice cream at 9 o'clock at night anymore to feel better. So I've taken people into the utero when there were issues where the mother was experienced trauma or difficulty, or things were going on outside of their lives, or again back many generations, and it's really amazing. And not only are you releasing at a cellular level,
Mhm.
the single most powerful thing that you can do is forgiveness.
Yeah.
And most people don't understand what forgiveness is.
Also, yes.
Right? And they think it's like giving people a pass.
Yeah.
And it's not that. It's dropping, it's letting it go. It's like walking around with a backpack full of bowling balls, carrying the weight of that. And you're thinking about that person and have all that resentment and anger, and they're not even thinking about you.
Mhm.
And so now it's impacting your life, everything you do, every person you talk to, all of your relationships. When you release that, it frees you. And it's interesting. I'm part of the next Business Life in the Universe book, number 10.
Okay.
So yes, and I was part of the 6th edition. So the 10th edition is with Joe Vitale.
Oh, yes.
Yes, that's the one I'm with. Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so he talks about his book Zero Limits is all about the power of the law of attraction
Yes.
and forgiveness, the Ho'oponopono. And I use the Ho'oponopono prayer with all of my clients, which creates miracles. And here's the really cool thing. I got an email. I work a lot about manifestation and clearing so that you become that attraction. I got an email 2 months ago from uh, people who are doing a documentary on Joe Vitale's Zero Limits,
Oh, yeah.
and I'm going to be in the movie.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
I haven't applied yet. I've been thinking about applying for months. Like right before we did an interview with Joe last year,
Yeah.
I saw that on his website and I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know. And I still didn't do it yet. So thank you for that reminder.
Well, I can hook you up.
Well, it was asked and I was like, yeah. It was that bravery piece, right? We're
Yeah.
Right.
questioning what the world sees as is, but I
Right.
wasn't quite ready at that point to step into it. So
Yeah.
No,
Wow, that's
I
amazing,
was
Lisa.
I was like, should I do it? Shouldn't I do it?
yes.
Is this what I need to do? And then I just went into it, and I surrendered. And that's the other part of it is surrendering.
Mhm.
So many of us try and control every aspect of our life. And sometimes the nugget that's really meant for us is over here, and we're busy focusing over here, and it's the surrender. And so those negative belief systems will keep us stuck. For instance, when I had made a decision almost 2 years ago that I was finally going to write a book that I've been trying to write for 10 years.
Mhm.
And I kept praying and asking, and finally I was like, Lisa, it's time to use your own tools on yourself.
Okay, I'm actually wanting to host a whole summit about that, so we should chat later about it.
So I had all these tools. I wrote my list of all the things that were in my way, all the beliefs. Who am I to write a book? What do I have to say that's not been said before? I wasn't a great student. How are people going to deal with my grammar and, all of that and my spelling? And then I realized there's editors for that.
Yeah.
So I had this whole long list, and I released, and then I forgave myself. And I did this ritual over and over and over again. And then all of a sudden, Corey Poirier of Blue Talks came into my life. I did that weekend long event the year ago.
Yeah.
And I decided to become part of the Blue Talk 6. And when that went bestseller, I was like, oh, I'm a best-selling author.
Woo!
It demystified the whole process for me. So now once I was a best-selling author, I could relax.
Yeah.
So then the title came to me, In Every Belief is a Lie. So this is my book. And then if you the
Love it.
word lie is in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm.
And crossing the fingers, I don't know if you remember as a child, you crossed your fingers so the lie didn't count.
Yeah. Love it.
I used to like cross as many
Yeah,
things as I possibly could.
So it's all about your programming. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have so much wisdom over 20 years. And I just started putting the chapters together of what I knew. And all of a sudden, it just poured out of me. And I kept visualizing myself on a stage with a green dress with a best-selling book in my hand. And I did that through the entire process. And then last summer, I got invited to speak at an event. And my friends were like, we got to go get a dress. We got to go get a dress with you. And I ended up buying this dress, and I got home and I took it out of the bag, and it was a green dress. It didn't dawn on me till I got home, and I just started crying. So yeah, and then I ended up on the stage in my green dress, holding my book. And that's the power of releasing negative belief systems that hold you back. It's the power of manifestation and the law of attraction, all in one. This past year, if someone told me 2 years ago that I would have had the year I did this past year, I would have bet on myself to lose. I would have lost a lot of money. Honestly, I would never, ever have believed it.
Yeah.
And it just takes like a moment to shift a belief system. It takes just a moment to change the way you see the world, and suddenly like the world can completely open up for you.
So question on that, because you opened up so many questions there, and so many people listening I bet you they're sitting there, and I can feel it too. It's like you get overwhelmed because what is the first thing they need to do to be able to, move through this and be able
Right.
to start the process of manifesting and, working on themselves and healing? What is the first step for them to do?
Right. You want to identify patterns, right?
Okay.
What is that hamster wheel that you're on that you can't break? What is that same thing that happens over and over again? Is it like you keep hitting a certain salary or amount of money that you make and you never get beyond that because there's some underlying belief around money, and you believe you wouldn't believe how much that topic is loaded. I mean, that can go spiritual, emotional, mental, you name it, physical. Past lives, if you want to get into that. But yeah, there's so much that's loaded to it. So the first step is always identifying these patterns and when do they come up. So I just sat and I wrote all these out, and then I used a tool. There's something called the emotional release method. There are other people who use the emotional freedom technique, tapping. There's a number of different techniques that you can use to release. So the emotional release method I love because it's so easy. It's literally, should I let it go? Yes. Could I let it go? Yes. When? Now. So you focus on that feeling, that belief, and you release it. And again, it's a lot easier to do it with the facilitator than it is to do it for yourself,
Yes.
but it can be done. I give that tool to all my clients. The other one is, again, the Ho'oponopono prayer. I started out with index cards, and I wrote down on each card a person, events, circumstances that I still had resentment towards, or whatever. Just, beating myself up over, because we're the best at beating ourselves up.
Mm-hmm.
And on that card, each card, I would look at it and recite every night before I went to bed and every morning when I woke up, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And over and over and over again. And I would recite it for each thing until it no longer had a charge. And once it didn't have a charge for me, I would tear it up and I was done. And sometimes there were some people that I had to keep doing it, or some circumstances that I had to do it for a while. And then miracles started happening in my life. I had someone who I hadn't spoken to in 14 years called me out of the blue and said, I miss you. I've noticed that things in our lives have changed. Things are better between us. Nothing had changed. I want you back in my life. How can we make this happen? And I was astonished. But not only, and we have since, seen each other. And what I've noticed is they have changed in my eyes. Now, whether or not they've actually changed, or I just see them differently, I see them in a different way that has been really beautiful. And I don't judge. So, going through the process of releasing and forgiving, what happens is you're no longer in judgment. And
Yes.
when you stop judging, that's the key to being in your being grounded. And the whole idea of everyone says, oh, you need to be in the present moment. Well, hello, please tell me how to do that, because I sat and meditated and my head spun practically off my head, right?
I can help with that.
Right? But learning to be present
Yeah.
is one of the hardest things, because we take everything that's happened in the past and project it into the future.
Yes.
So when you forgive and you let go, suddenly you're in the present, and suddenly you see things as they truly are. And you stop, because this is so cliche, but every time you point your finger at someone, there's three fingers pointing back at me. So now whenever I have someone in my life who triggers me, I will say, what is it in me that I have to work on that's unresolved so that I can release this? It doesn't mean I still have to be their best friend, but they're my teacher, they're my mirror. And so I do my best not to reflect onto other people my own stuff.
So I have a couple of comments. Real quick, the basic way for you to be present is to understand the difference between curiosity and judgment. You did talk about judgment. So judgment is either anxiety about the past or depression for the future, or sorry, anxiety for the future, depression for the past. But you cannot be judgmental at the same time as you're curious. Judgment is something that closes you, and curiosity is something that opens you. Curiosity can only happen in the present.
Mic drop.
Does that make it feel better
Thank
for you?
you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's such a beautiful tool to teach others,
Yeah.
because you're so right. It's like going into the place of curiosity is just like, I wonder how they were programmed. I wonder how they came up with that belief system.
Exactly.
I'm
But that's
curious
how we
as
bridge
to
it.
what that, instead of making them bad.
Yeah. So when we look at the past or the future, we can still be present when we're practicing mindfulness or meditation, because the idea is to be curious about those thoughts, not to push them away, like you were mentioning at the very beginning of this.
Exactly.
So,
I love that.
yeah,
Thank you, Laura. That
you're
was
welcome.
great.
It's what I do. It's part of what I do. Like, because we bridge all of these different puzzle pieces in life. And really, the hard part, which is where experts come in, is taking all of these puzzle pieces and being able to put them together so other people can see the picture. That's what we're good at. So when you're talking about these different wavelengths for our mind, and forgiveness and surrender and identifying patterns, we need help with that, because I got a tattoo in my back. I can't see it. I need a mirror. I may know how to do massage therapy, but I can't massage my back. I need somebody else to do it. This is where the expert comes in. Yeah.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
And you know what? Coaches need coaches too.
Exactly.
It's like, because I always want to grow. I always want to become a better person, and I always add on new tools. And how many times do you get a client who comes in, you go, oh, thank God I worked on that yesterday.
That's always how it works, though. It's like, what am I working on? What am I up leveling? And the universe just knows. They're like, you need a little bit of extra work or a little bit of feedback to go, I did actually do my work. Or I need this little area that I need to tweak a few times.
Exactly.
Always.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Lisa, there's so much here. You talked about the 9 different whys and you being the challenger. I
Yeah.
want to know, what is it in the work that you do, since you've chosen these tools and this way to express your message? what is it that you're challenging that is typically around you in your industry and in your space?
So most people, when they think about coaching,
Mm.
will think about someone who's gone to a specific program and has gotten certified, and the work is a workbook that comes through, and there are some really amazing things that you can learn from that. But I am certified as a Y coach, but what I do is I try and break barriers and get people to push themselves way outside their comfort zone, because a conventional coach can get you so far, but if you have an underlying belief and you don't know where the root cause is, all the coaching in the world at beta, which is where we're at now,
Yeah.
is not going to allow you to access that information. And I often also work with coaches because they'll have a client that's stuck and they'll say, Lisa, I think this person could use a couple of sessions with you just to release that. And then what happens is I get to make their coach a superstar, because now they can really take off because that block is gone. And that's what I love. I don't generally work with people for long term. Most of the people I work with is really getting down deep into the root cause of money issues. This is a funny thing, because I do a talk on money mindset, and I show this a mansion, and I ask everyone in the room, and I like, who here wants to make $1 million a year? And everyone's raising their hand, and then I ask them, tell me about the people who live in that house, and everyone's like, oh, they hate each other. The parents are getting a divorce. The kids are all on drugs. They
Oh my
can't
God.
afford to heat the house. And I'm like, oh my God. And what always comes up for me, and I would say, is that if you don't believe that money is an exchange, and that you are worthy and deserving of money, and that people with money are good, then how are you ever going to attract it? And I want to ask you a question. How many of you have ever seen a movie that portrays people with money as really good people?
Oh, it's so true. Very few.
Like one?
Very few. And if there is, something ends up terribly happening to them. Like
Yes.
they get taken advantage of, or they go into substance abuse, or
Right.
see it time and time again. I love the topic on money. Like, I think it's a big, big issue for a lot of people.
Yeah, so that reinforcement happens over and over again on an
Mhm.
unconscious level. So not only are we programmed from our childhood, but the reinforcement from the news, the reinforcement from movies, from television shows, everything that we come in contact with. And even this is not a political statement, it's just an observation. If you have people that are watching MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News, are they all getting the same information?
No.
No, but they're all supposed to be reporting the truth,
Yes.
right? So we have paradoxes in our life, that we have people who gravitate to information that's based on their programming, right?
Yep.
So if you are more conservative or if you are more liberal, you're going to be more inclined to watch that, and then you get your beliefs reinforced.
Yep.
So do you find that when you're speaking to people, one of the biggest like stumbling blocks I have is about the concept of money, being able to, heal money, have a different perception? And do you think that a lot of it has to do with when they grew up, right? Like how their parents portrayed money?
It can be.
Okay.
It's not just that, it's also inherited, it's also beliefs. There is something that I found really interesting about in the Bible. There's some quote about it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than a wealthy person to get into the heaven. And I was like, what? So and then there are people who can discern, and people who can interpret whatever that means, whatever that was.
Interpret it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Eye of the Needle is the name of an entrance into, I think it's the city of Jerusalem. And in
Okay.
order for the camel to get through the door, it was a very short door. So you had to take off all of the bags and the wealth from the camel, which was carrying it for you, so that they could get on their knees and go through the door.
Okay.
That's what that's about. But then over the years, right, you start to see it differently, perceive it differently, and have all of these stories that change. And now we're left with this. Yeah.
Yes. So from a spiritual standpoint,
Mhm.
we get programmed, and there's different beliefs around tithing. There's different beliefs around religion and how much you should have, taking vows of poverty, to be a good person. So there's so much that's in there. Plus, your mother may have a belief around scarcity, your father may not, or something happens. There's so much that's there. It's a very loaded topic because there's a lot of trauma that happens around money.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that it's also has to do with because I deal a lot with people from the money perspective. And I always say to people, like, over the years, I've been doing this so long that I can tell people's habits and their money trauma within a 30-day bank statement. And,
Love
but,
it.
but here's the one thing I can say, and you probably can attest to, like, money, you're right, is such a big topic, but people are so scared to come forward with that because they get judged, right? You could say you're the most, and I've seen people come in and say that, I've talked to my family, and I've talked to people that I thought were, how supportive of me, and I've talked to them about my financial trouble, and then I got judged on it. So I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
It's such a sensitive topic for a lot of people, but it's one of the hardest ones, I think, for people to move through.
Yeah.
And here's something that I learned that really blew my mind, because most people think about scarcity around people who don't have money, right?
Hmm.
But you talk to any C-suite exec who is driven, and I will show you someone who is terrified of losing everything.
100%. Yeah.
So they run themselves into the ground because it's never enough. So, and then there's other complications that happen around that with addiction and everything else, which I'm not a licensed mental health practitioner, so I can't talk about that. But I will say that that drive of running yourself and not feeling good enough, and putting themselves through the ringer until they can literally have heart attacks and and nervous breakdowns and run themselves into the ground because they never feel like they can ever make enough, or they never feel good enough, or have perfectionism issues.
Or feel like they have to spend money to be able to get people to think they're worthy.
Exactly.
It's not self-worth.
It's an inside job, right?
Yes.
Self-love. And here's another thing that I had to learn was what self-love looked like. Because, I think about those old cartoons. Was it Dastardly and Muttley would float in the air and hug himself and float around in the air or whatever. And I would sit there and go, that was like this image I had of loving yourself. And what I realized that self-love is boundaries. Self-love is honoring who you are and standing up for yourself. Self-love is about following your dreams regardless of what other people think, and challenging other people's paradigms about you and the paradigm you have around yourself, and doing things that scare you. Now, this is self-love from a challenge point of view. We have other there's nine whys. So there's 9 different ways of people loving themselves and loving others. But from what I have always found is, whenever I push myself out of my comfort zone, whenever I do something to really get to that next step, that's when the magic happens.
Because you're living in that challenge mode
Right.
instead of being scared by it or being deterred by it. Yeah.
Oh, it scares me.
Oh, I know. Like, when I wrote my chapter in the Blue Talks book, I probably bawled like a baby every time I sat down to write.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
People don't realize, the power and the catharsis, what happens when you write and become vulnerable like that. The first chapter in my book, I talk about getting the courage to leave my marriage. And I was studying with a mentor of mine, and she was just trained in firewalk facilitation. So she asked me if I would like to participate in a week-long program of walking fire, walking on broken glass, of bending arrows and rebar from the throat. And I was like, sure, why not? And then the first night, she told us that in order to graduate the following Saturday, I was going to have to walk 40 feet of red hot coals. And then I went into an instant panic and nervous breakdown, and I whined and cried the entire week. which was hysterical because I couldn't even look at my wins. Like every day I was breaking arrows. Every day I walked on 4 feet of broken wine bottles, which was the most exquisite experience of my life because it's the most present you'll ever be.
Wow.
It's amazing. If I never have to walk on fire again, I'll be really happy. But I was doing 7 to 10 feet a day. But I finished that week, and what happened was when it came to my last walk on that Saturday morning, I was a mess. I watched everyone else walk, and I was the last. And one of the people in my class looked at me and said, "How much fire have you walked this week?" And I said, "Well, we walked at least 7 to 10 feet every night." And he's like, "Yeah. Have you walked 40 feet already?" I said, "Probably over 50." He said, "Exactly. So this should be a piece of cake. Go walk." And something in my brain snapped and I just walked. It was the easiest walk the entire week, and I did not burn my feet at all. And I remember driving home with my flip-flops and the air conditioner down on my feet just because they were hot, but they weren't burned, thinking, if I can do that, I can do anything. And that was the beginning of the dismantling of my marriage.
That's
Nice.
incredible. It's mindset, right? Mindset
It's
really
all
does change
mindset.
everything.
And I will not do a fire walk with someone who is depressed because it's all about your energy frequency has to be equal or above the chi energy of the fire. So what happens is if you're below that and you're scared and you're not in that right frame of mind, that's when people burn themselves. So when Tony Robbins does his fire walk, he plays loud music and does chanting and gets people up.
It's
I
it's the it's the emotional frequencies. So you got to be so high up in order
Yep.
to be there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're powerful and people have to understand, and Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about all this, is that the reprogramming of your mind, and a lot of what hypnosis and NLP does is imagine those beliefs are like a record player or a CD. We have to scratch that record, scratch the CD to release all those old belief systems and create a new track, a new belief system, a new repetitive thought that's going to elevate you instead.
So do you recommend hypnosis for people that are starting to want to look to get into, therapy and changing mindset and their belief systems? Is this something that you recommend to start with?
You know, I can only speak for myself and my clients. So going back to the 5 brain frequencies. So when you're at beta, which is what we're at now, how many times can I say to you, do you remember something that happened to you at 1 years old or 2 years old? Some people can, but most people can't. But or people say, I don't have a lot of memories from my childhood. That's because it's stored in different places in your mind at these other frequencies. So when you meditate, you're going into alpha or theta. When you are daydreaming and you have complete control of the entire process. If someone doesn't want to talk about something that happened, they don't have to. What I'm looking for is the feeling, releasing the feeling, and replace the feeling with what they wish they could have had instead. That's all I need. I like to have the story because it helps me dig deeper and go into it. But for me, it's all about going back and wiping out all of the stuff that doesn't serve you anymore and replacing it with something that can really bring you joy. Because to me, if you wake up and you're not feeling joy and having an appreciation for the day and going into that childlike wonder, what are you here for?
Yeah.
To wake up in depression and anxiety, which I lived that, man. I don't ever want to go back there again. And I've had situations in my life. I'll tell you, divorce is no fun. Depression, suicide is not fun. And I know how hard it is to pull out of that. So, but you don't have to use hypnosis for that. You can use it for other things. Smoking. And here's the other thing, smoking cessation, why it's so hard to quit. Because if you understand the chakra system, the heart chakra is where the lungs and the heart are. So people store grief there. And so the cigarette is about suppressing emotion because they don't want to deal with the pain. They don't want to deal with it. So they need that cigarette. So what do? They quit smoking and they start eating. Then they try to stop eating. They actually did a study with for weight loss with people who had gastric band surgery. That when they had that surgery, they went on to become, have addiction issues with alcohol and drugs because they're still numbing themselves.
Yeah.
So this is about getting to the root cause. So if you have anything that you want to release, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
So Lisa, with the last minute or so before we have our next guest come on, tell us, like, what is the message that you want to leave people with? If there was one thing that you needed them to remember, what would it be?
That it's possible to change your life. It's possible to see the world through the eyes, that childlike wonder, to have joy in your life just by changing your thoughts.
Sweet.
And it sounds like it's easy. It's not necessarily easy, but once you surrender to it and let it go, you will have more abundance and more joy in your life than you can ever imagine. And I wouldn't have believed it until I experienced it myself. So, look for the joy in life.
Wonderful. So where do we find you?
So I have two websites, LisaSchermerhornCoaching.com, and then I have the Center for Next Level Coaching.com. It's CNLPcoaching.com, and I have a business partner, Kevin Martin, with that. And you can find my book, In Every Belief is a Lie, on Amazon. And that's available.
There you go.
And that's how you can find me.
I'll be ordering that book today, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
Yes,
it's always wonderful to be in a space with you, and I love the purple hair. So.
Thank you. Fellow challenge. We'll have to talk.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so our next guest that is coming up, give me a thumbs up behind the scene if you are ready. Okay, great. How do you pronounce your name? I'm going to butcher it. Is it Vandana or Vandana? Please tell us. So come on stage. How do you pronounce your name?
What? Am I on mute?
Yes.
No. Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, okay. Vandana.
Yes. Vandana. Beautiful.
I've met another lady with a very similar name lately, and she pronounces it differently. But now that you say it, I remember having that conversation with you.
Yeah.
Vandana. Okay.
Love it.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Tell us a little bit about you. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. So I'm a marketer and strategist by trade. Have done the corporate thing and then did consulting for about 15 to 20 years, and have worked with large multinationals to smaller, mid-sized to entrepreneurs, like the whole range. And essentially I build businesses. That's what I do for a living. So anything that needs to be figured out and, just try to hack what the issue is and get a solution.
Okay, so if my nails got filed down because I did something else and now they're breaking all the time, you can solve that? No.
I could, but may not build your business a whole lot.
I know. I thought I would try to stump you. Okay. So yes, this whole Blue Talks event is about amplifying your message. So this time I would love to start with, what have been your chosen ways for you to share your message? And then we'll get into what your message actually is.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So for me, as I was going through, I won't say what the message is, but as I was going through my career, I noticed no matter where I went, whether it was, on a corporate level or with entrepreneurs or with our nannies or with our kids or in high school or wherever it was, there was one skill that I thought has the ability to change everything. And we're never taught. And so we never master. So it's been a passion of mine for the last number of years, is to figure out how to try to get people to understand what it is and how to use it and what the techniques are, because it's a tough one to teach. And so for me, it's inherent in me that I talk about it just because it's a passion of mine. I'm also writing a book about it, and I'm also starting a program for it. We'll likely start one-on-one with, or small group with either corporate or individual clients. But I'm also going to be starting a pretty big group for women specifically, just because I think we're pretty awesome. And and it's not about, I'm not some super huge feminist as such, but I really believe that women are one of the greatest underutilized resources that the world has. And if they were to use this skill, I think we'd be in a different place.
So we're going to wait till the end of the webinar to tell people.
Yeah, like what is it? We're waiting for this.
What is the skill that you were talking about?
So the skill is, the simplest way to put it, I would say, is creative problem solving.
Ooh.
Oh, okay.
So it's, it's the thing is that it's amazing to me how many people are brilliantly solving the wrong problem, and so you never get anywhere. And so you kind of think, well, I solved the problem. So, or at least I thought I solved the problem. So without getting the problem right, and first of all, actually making sure you even have a problem, because sometimes we create problems that don't exist. And everybody has done that. Think about your family, right?
Yeah.
But make sure you actually have a problem. Otherwise, don't try to solve something that isn't broken, or doesn't need to be addressed. And then make sure you have the right problem. That's really key. And I think what people often miss is that they think they're solving for the problem, but what we actually need to solve for is the outcome. So if you look at it that way, your questions completely change. And that I think is really paramount to making sure you're approaching this the right way.
That sounds like the way a friend of mine loves to explain wonderful website design. It's not about speaking to the problem to say, this is your problem, I'm your solution.
Right.
It's, here is that outcome that you really love.
Yeah.
And here's the pathway to that outcome that you really love.
Yeah.
Completely different feel.
Completely different feel. And I think, you're not, what you want is the outcome. That's not, you don't want to be solving a problem. You want to be solving for the outcome. I mean, I've said it enough, but I mean, the message is pretty clear, I think.
Because there's so many different problems that could have the same outcome. So if you're understanding where you're trying to go, like you're typing it on Google Maps, it's like, if I want to get to Paris, France, and I don't tell it where I am, it can't tell me.
Right.
But if I just say, take me somewhere nice, it's still not going to tell me anything. We need that beginning and that end. So
well, we do. And the other thing too is that people often don't realize that outcomes, the way to get to outcomes, can have multiple options. And so I try to help people create that sort of, how do we get to that stage? How do we figure out what our options are? Because in a world where more and more of our options are being taken away from us, especially as women, think about how much that means, right? So to always have options, and I teach my kids this too. It's not something that I don't practice myself. So
it's opening the door to possibilities, right? Especially I find when I was doing a women forum a couple of weeks ago and speaking there, and so many women were talking to me about, just because, again, I think it's a slow transition for women to be on an equal playing field, from a gender perspective, and also just from a respect perspective, that they're feeling that their boundaries and even their possibilities are limited. So being able to open that up gives people options and, the possibility of what they can do and what they can excel at. And one thing I was going to say is, I love the fact that you talk about, because so many people in business, I find, we look at the end game and not look at the process of how to be able to get there. You're really kind of breaking that down. Like, you got to work on the process, because that'll help you get to the ends, whichever different path that it takes you to.
So true. And people don't know the process, and not that there's only one right process, but there's so many different tools, let's say, that you can pull from in terms of the way you think, that
Yes.
makes a huge difference. I was just going to tell you, when you were talking, I was thinking about the study that was done about women and the gender age gap. The income gap.
Yes.
And they found, after the study that was done, and this is actually a film that was done as well, there's a film done on it, is that the biggest driver of that was having to have children. And interestingly enough, what happens is that when you're all in your 18s and 20s and maybe 25s, even 30s, men and women are here. But what happens is women have to have the child and traditionally stay at home taking care of them. And so they stay here and the husband goes here, or the partner, or whoever it is. And so that's why what creates the income gap. That is the main and pretty much the critical reason why we have that today. So we have to find a way to change that. But what's really interesting is that there are only 2 countries in the world where that income gap does not exist.
Ooh,
And you'll be surprised to hear them, which is Iceland and Rwanda.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, I did hear about Iceland.
Yeah. Iceland, maybe you've heard of it. Rwanda, it
No.
was shocking to learn that. And there's reasons for that. And, we can get into that at some point, but really it's amazing. And we ought to take a look at what happened there. And it may not be the right thing, but it's still kind of interesting. Like, what can we learn from those, worlds?
Yeah. So my biggest question right now is, again, going back to the beginning of like you're in all these different areas sharing your message, and you have this message.
Yeah.
Why did you get into this work of helping other people build their businesses? Why is this so important to you?
I think, first of all, they always say in the world there's givers and there's takers.
Yeah.
If you believe that, I'm a giver. So regardless of whether you believe that, I know I'm a giver. I've always been like that. I've been like that since, I've done tons of charity work and helping other people. And that's what keeps me going. That is just the root of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that we all have the ability to help each other and do better and make the world a better place. I know that sounds really, very.
Oh no, but you mean it, so I can feel it.
Yeah. But I really sincerely believe that. And I also believe in a life of abundance. So to me, how can we not help each other? Why would we not do that? Especially when we can. And I know that every single person on this planet has the ability to do something even better. The program that I'm starting is actually called Meant for More. So that's one thing that I'm really proud of. And it's still in the formulating stages, but hopefully by May we'll get it going. My goal is to launch May 1st, because being a Monday and being the first of the month, it's supposed to be a pretty auspicious time. So
I can see how excited you are. You can just, Laura, can't you just see the passion in her face? I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have this phrase called "speak from your sparkle," and so you can see it. Without ever knowing what somebody is specifically talking about, you see it in their eyes before the words ever come out.
Yeah. I think too that, I'm one of those people that some people are perhaps, they think about themselves, and I think about others a lot. I do think about myself, probably not as much as I should. I will give myself that.
We do as women anyway, a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that I love hearing people's success stories. I love it. And I love, like, it. I just think, like, that is just so cool. Like, it's not about, how come I didn't do this, or how come I didn't get this? And I just don't care. I just think that there's always something we can learn. I don't care what age we are, or, what stage we're at. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So
that's why I do what I do.
So where do you find your passion when you're doing your coaching? Do you find you excel more with entrepreneurs, or do you find in the corporate, in that C-suite area? Where do you think your biggest, maybe your aha when you're coaching with those different types of groups?
I think for me, the people that have resonated with the message the fastest is what I would say. It's not that other people don't, but if you're looking for, I can grab the attention of these people, it would definitely be entrepreneurs, and it would definitely be corporate middle management. And I would say senior management too. But here's the thing, you know, when it's going to sound funny, but when you're in the corporate world, you don't always have options if you're an outlier.
Mhm.
And so those are the people that I go after. And CEOs are not always outliers because they're conformist to what the organization is saying. If they are teachable, then they will come and they'll be a part of this. But if they're not, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's we need all kinds of people. So, you know, hopefully they'll get a message at some point. But I think that's sort of the entrepreneurs and the corporate professional. And when I say professional, I don't mean corporate.
Mhm.
Professional is different than corporate, and people often mistake that. So I want to make sure that, you know, it's more than just people who work for someone else.
Mhm.
So your why is that? I missed that. Like, what is that huge why behind doing this work? Why not do something else?
Because I think for me, it's been a passion of mine for so long.
Yeah.
And I know that it has the ability to break through for so many people. It doesn't matter what your background is.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter, you know, what your capabilities are. And you know, I've even worked with kids who are perhaps outliers in a non-traditional sense,
Mhm.
and you know, really, really smart people. And what happens is that when you're stuck in a situation where you are a nonconformist, you are an outlier, you do think differently, you behave differently, you have nowhere to go. And I think that leads to stagnation and boredom and trying to figure out, you know, where do you go next? And so there's inertia. So you don't do anything, right?
Yeah.
So it's how do we propel ourselves to do more, and not just more, but the more that matters. And it's funny. And one of the things that I talk about is creating and living your own anthem. So everybody has their own, and it changes over time, sure, but at least there's a place to begin, and it leads you in a direction. You can find a purpose. And I think there's a lot of us floating around right now. I went through the same thing. And, you know, we all get to a stage in our lives where you kind of go, now what? You know, I would hate to think that I have arrived, you know, like, I mean, it's like, how boring is that? And how disheartening is that? Like, I worry about, you know, people when they say they want to retire, and I'm thinking, like, that feels like an end, you know, the way people talk about it. And I don't ever see myself in that situation. I think of life as a continuous evolution, as do I success. So so I don't know. To me, that's what gets me. And that's why I do what I do.
Yeah, I see my mission as something that could easily take 10,000 lifetimes. Because
Yeah.
I'm like, there's so much in this world that
Yes.
needs to be changed according to my
beautiful.
like
Yeah.
idealist visionary
Beautiful.
view of it. And
Yeah.
I can't do that in one lifetime. But
You
I'm
know,
like, how can I get the most bang for my buck? And that's to help the 10,000 people in this lifetime do all of those things because that's what they're good at. And I'm good at helping them do that. So it's like, you go do your amazing things, and I will be the rah, rah, rah to get you through that mindset and the
I
emotion.
love it.
Do it.
Love it. Love it. And I love that. It's interesting. I just wanted to tell you that and you know, I'm not keeping an eye on the time, so you tell me.
Oh, yeah, I got it.
But what I was going to say is that there was a study done between what drives happiness, the kinds of activities.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you've heard of this or not, but there's telic and atelic. So telic is the stuff that ends, atelic is the stuff that does not end. So when you're going, you know, you're driving to the grocery store, there's an end to that. I'm going to retire, there's an end to that, is the way your mind sees it. And as opposed to, hey, I'm going to go for a drive.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to do something different after I do this in my career or whatever it is. So it's the atelic stuff that drives. So to your point, Laura, I mean, you know, there's just so much, and everything in life is cyclical. Everything, you know, from the rungs of trees to the success cycle that we each have that you want to tap into. So those are big for me. The other thing I teach a lot about is neuroplasticity. So how your brain changes and how you can affect that. So that's a big one for me.
We had kind of
That's
hit on that.
interesting. Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, we had hit on that a little bit with Lisa, and as she was talking, the way my mind works is I play videos in my head. So I'm picturing like this rut of the same pattern happening over and over and over, whether it's healthy or unhealthy, who knows? But then it gets so deep that when we're trying to change our brain and we're trying to get out of that rut, it's more and more difficult the more we have practiced it in the past. So then the question really is do we attempt to fill it in? Do we attempt to just kind of like chip away at the wall until we set ourselves free one day? Like, how do we take those next steps?
So the thing with neuroplasticity is it's going to happen no matter what. So it's not really something you have a choice in, but you have a choice in terms of how you affect it.
Okay.
So, so there are those, so neuroplasticity, neuro meaning having to do with the brain and neurons. Plasticity means the moldability. So how you mold your brain, right? So just so everybody is on an equal playing field here. The thing with neuroplasticity is that no matter what it learns, it takes in and it finds another way to work it through, or it takes that information and rejigs. In fact, interestingly enough, AI is actually based on neuroplasticity. That's where AI started. And so everybody's like, all into AI and but it starts with the brain and how the brain works. And they're trying to mimic the brain in many ways, and perhaps make it even better. But the thing is that with neuroplasticity, there's voluntary and involuntary things that affect it. So involuntary things is if you have an accident, if you have an aneurysm, if you are born, with a certain disability, etc. Sorry, I'm just going to cancel this then. So that's the involuntary stuff. The voluntary stuff is when you choose to do things that affect your brain in a certain way. So my big one is curiosity. And so if you are always keeping your mind in a state of curiosity, whether you think of it as like a scientist or a toddler, it's the same thing. You always want to stay curious because that's how we learn, right? So for me, the cycle is really about you have the curiosity, you gather information, you learn from it, you discover new things, you make choices, and you recalibrate. When your brain recalibrates, you start a new cycle. Because when you learn something, you're actually going to get to a stage where you'll be curious about, but what about this?
I know.
How about that? So then you just constantly are going in a cycle. And guess what? The more you go through that cycle over and over again, you build wisdom. And that's what it comes down to, right? For each of us. So it's, you think about a child, they burn their hand, they learn, they're not going to do it again. Maybe I should not. Maybe I should think about this. This is what happened last time, and I'm going to recalibrate and not do that. So maybe I can touch something else,
That would be me as a kid. Yes.
Yeah, me too. I got into so much trouble in my life.
Yes. My poor parents.
Because we were just curious. But so I think that's a pretty big aspect of progression and how we manage things moving forward.
So staying on this line of curiosity versus judgment, it's again the same kind of conversation. We see the patterns between everyone that we interview.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Staying on this pattern of curiosity, especially in business. I'm curious about the situation that I keep seeing over and over. People like me who are challengers, they like to test and question the status quo. But yet there's this feeling of the industry saying, but you need to have all your ducks in a row, and you have to have all the research done, and you have to have all the answers, and you have to prove to me that this works before I will ever get on board with you. I know way too many entrepreneurs in this particular situation. They're like, but I'm trying to change things. And you want to demand that I already have answers when there has to be somebody getting on board with it first other than me? How would you speak to that situation?
Well, I would start with the outcome in mind as we, started this conversation. I think, first of all, if you're solving for the outcome versus the problem, it'll lead you in a different direction potentially, and potentially many other options, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is it depends on who you're selling to. So if you're selling to a corporate client, for example, here's the interesting thing is that when you go from a business, being part of a business to being an entrepreneur, it's a huge shift, and people don't realize that. So the shift is that when you're in the corporate world, somebody's telling you what to do. You get into the entrepreneurial world and nobody's telling you what to do anymore. You got to figure out what you need to figure out, you know? So the thing is that if we actually solve for the outcome and we show the process for our thinking and how we got there, I think we as entrepreneurs can have much more success. I mean, I've seen it in spades, so I definitely feel that way.
I'm going to attest to that because that's exactly what I did. I wanted to kind of set you up where I was, see where you would take people, and then see how that compared to my experience, because that's exactly my experience. When I was busy focusing on just the process, or here's how to solve this one thing, people weren't getting on board because it's so linear without any room for expression.
Yeah.
Now that I'm focusing on, what is this outcome that we're all wanting? It's that desire base. So then people are empowered to make decisions instead of feeling persuaded.
Well, it's interesting, even with kids,
Yeah.
if you're having sibling rivalry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm teaching my kids this, it's like, okay, she's doing this or he's doing that, and you want this outcome. Really? And this is going to be your action? Really? Like, you're not going to get your outcome. So think through that, think about where you want this thing to net out and govern yourself accordingly.
Yeah.
So.
And I think it's so challenging for people that are entrepreneurs. I've been in this space for a long time, and I see when new people are coming into to the entrepreneurial world, they don't know everything, right? Like, they don't know. And so they get overwhelmed, and then, they are looking at the end goal, but it's how do you get there? And then how do you get the skill set for everything? Because to your point, when you're in the corporate world, you have levels and you have support and you have expertise in different departments to kind of bring it all together. As an entrepreneur, you're your only person. So my question to you then, Wanda, is how do you break that down for an individual so that they can get perspective on what's a priority for their business when they're first starting out?
So I think one of the things that I work on a lot is, once we figure out what the outcome needs to be, is I work on a critical path with people. And then I work on a project list. And I know that sounds really simple, but it is magic.
Yes.
Magic. Because with a critical path, what you need to do is you need to figure out all the different elements that it's going to take to get to that outcome. Let's say you're launching a product. You'll need marketing, you'll need research, you'll need product development, you'll need packaging, so on and so forth. In each of those, what are all the steps to get to completing each of those steps?
Okay.
And then what order do they need to be in? And how much time is each going to take? And how do they all relate to each other? So it's almost like a matrix, right? So it's not just about, okay, here's the timeline. It's not. It's more complicated than that.
Like a Gantt chart.
Yeah, no, that's what it sounds like. But it doesn't have to be. There's actually simple ways to get through it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is a project list. So what happens is that once you get your critical path together, if you can actually create a week by week, here's what I need to do. Like, you'll see it on the chart. You'll see it on the calendar. You'll be amazed at what you can accomplish. And it's so simple. Now, with entrepreneurs, it's true because we don't have all the information. But my goal is to help you think differently. And people always say think differently, like, it's so cliche, right? Nobody really knows what that means. Like, what the heck does that mean? So I want to teach what that means. And if you're actually thinking differently, you're going to think of all kinds of options to get at the answers that you need. I mean, there are so many things in our future that have not been created yet, and professions that have not happened yet. But you look at what's happened, from the time that we had COVID and the explosion of certain, segments of the industry, right? Or of the working world. it's completely different. Same thing with the internet explosion. It was very different. Like, how many jobs were created because of that we never knew about 10 years ago, you know? So I'm very much a possibilities person and an options person. I don't think that there's anything that we can't solve. I mean, as they say, you know, it was impossible until somebody did it, right? So,
But I think the key to success for people, whether you're not, it's an entrepreneur or someone in the corporate world, is you
Yeah.
can provide this foundation.
yeah,
But it's about the habit of being able to continue to do that for every project that you are building out, right? Because that's going to be the true success, is the continuation of what they've learned with you
yeah.
as they go through. So how do you work through that with them so that consistency is going to win the game for them in the end?
So I think there's a basic understanding of the processes that needs to happen. And I talk about this in my book. My book is called Might.
Ooh.
And it's
You have
actually,
it?
I actually don't have it because it's not produced yet. But I have a copy.
Okay.
Um,
We need to talk behind the scenes, book club.
Yes.
Mhm.
Whoops. I don't know what happened there.
That's
You're scrolling down. Sorry about that.
No worries.
So yeah, so and it talks about, you know, how to solve the impossible and change everything. And it also talks about where you need to go when nothing seems to work.
Yeah.
And it talks about the different mindset or thinking processes or tools that you can bring to the forefront when you need them. You don't, there is a logical flow in the book, but you don't have to use all of them all the time. You know, or you check off each as you go. And if you've already got it, don't worry about it. You move to the next step. But it's I mean, I hate to say about things being systematic, but I think it's easier for people to absorb. I'm sort of an all sort of, you know, out there kind of person, but systems I think are very important when it comes to teaching and grasping and learning and quite honestly replicating. But the thing is that because each problem is different, you don't know what you're getting into, right?
Yeah.
So people need that sort of ongoing coaching. And I don't consider myself a coach as such, only because I don't want people to be accountable to me. It's about being accountable to yourself. So I feel as myself as I'm kind of a guide. And I always use this example because I think it says it really well. If you've ever watched Paralympic skating, or not skating, skiing, excuse me, alpine skiing, I don't know if you ever watched, but it's phenomenal. And what you have is you have these incredible athletes going down the slaloms at incredible speeds. Like, you would never know that this person's blind. And what they have is they skate behind their guide. And so it's the guide that the only way they're connected is through an earpiece. So the guide is actually telling them as he's skiing down in front of them, say, okay, then there's this, then there's that. Okay, try this, then this. Okay, here's what, you know, giving all the direction. And every time I see that, I think, man, that's what I want to be. You know, that's what I want to be seen. I want to be the guide. I don't want the glory. I'm not sort of an out there, like, and, you know, just bring it all and it's all about me. I'm just not about that. If I can help people succeed, I'm grateful for that.
Excellent.
So that's kind of the visual that I have in my mind.
That's amazing. I'm picturing that in such awe. I was watching an episode of Star Trek. I'm a nerd. I'm an entrepreneur. And they were doing a similar thing. They had the shuttlecraft out in front who's communicating with the main ship Voyager to tell them, like, within a few seconds or microseconds, how to shift and change. It's the same kind of thing in business.
Yeah.
We're not necessarily a mile ahead. We're one, maybe two steps ahead of our clients.
Yeah.
We're right there. We understand it so beautifully and so with such depth that we
Yes.
can have those conversations in the moment and really have a true understanding of what our
Yeah,
clients.
I think I think it's beautifully said. I think that's beautifully said.
It's just like that. There's a book called Traction. I don't know if any of you read that one.
Mhm,
It's great,
mhm.
right? Like, you have the visionary and then you have the chief operating officer, right? So you're the one that's coaching and guiding people and say, okay, slow down, look at this process, take this lane. And the visionary is already, like, you know, 4 or 5 years ahead, but no, back up. See, I'm the visionary and I have the chief operating officer at my business. So I know how well we work.
Yeah,
And we'd be lost without each other. And
yeah,
if you
totally.
get that, right?
Yeah.
And you're able to see the problem, I think, with entrepreneurs when they're first starting out, they got to be all to everything. And they might be, and they probably are a visionary, but process for them is not there. So to be able to have you or
Yeah.
anyone that's in that field to be able to support them, then they can start building that as they grow their business. It's
You know,
phenomenal.
it's interesting that you bring that up, because the brain can't distinguish between what and how. And the thing is that most people teach the what.
Yeah.
I'm teaching the how.
You love it. What a great analogy. Love that.
Yeah, I just you have to be smart, because you have to be able to distinguish between what's the what and what's the how,
Yeah,
right?
love it.
So you can't. Anyway, I'll just the example that I was going to use is that when you go to a webinar, they're going to give you all this amazing information. You can do this, and here's how this happened, and here's what we did, and and then you have to do this, and then you have to do that, but they don't tell you how, right? That's how you get more interested in, hey, let me find a little bit more from this guy. Let me go to his course. Let me go to whatever. And I think from a book perspective, I even say on the back cover, it says, this is a book about how. It's not about the what, and it's not about the why. Because everybody's talking why. And I think that's critically important. But this is just an aspect that most people don't talk about. And so even in the Meant for More program, that's what I'm doing. It's for those people. Let's take women right now. You know that there's something within you that has to come out, but you have no idea how to get to it, because you don't even know, how to move forward from where you are today.
Oh,
Right?
I have such an aha moment, because I love it. You said, once you figured out what your why is, then you move to the person that's the how, right? To be able to build it out. I love it.
Yeah. Have you heard of Simon Sinek Start with Why?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like understanding,
That is
why
true.
am I doing this?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
picture my inner 6-year-old every time that comes up.
Yeah.
It's like, how do
Yeah.
I convince that little kid who doesn't want to do anything unless it's for her own best interest?
Yeah.
How do I convince her that she wants to, which is the why?
Yeah.
Then tell her how she's doing it, and then the what. Like,
Love
just
it.
to make that process more easeful.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, the book itself, and the stories that are in that book,
Yeah.
are so engaging. Like, they're so fun to read,
Yeah.
because they're stories about real life situations where you go, wow, like they actually use the problems of creative problem solving without using it. It's like, even when you talk about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and how he wrote the Sherlock stories, he actually based it on information that he had put together before Scotland Yard even started using those ideas.
Oh, nice.
So it's pretty cool. Like, it's like, there's some really neat stories. There's a story about Abraham Wald, who basically, was trying to solve the problems of why planes weren't coming back, and they went to him and said, oh, they're all getting shot down, and look, they're all getting shot down, with with their noses and stuff, and the fuselage, etc. We need to protect these people. So the research committee came to him, and they said, it's a strategic research group was a big group that solved problems in the world for World War II in the U.S. Superior minds, like the strongest minds we could assemble, and they came to him and said, okay, so we need to protect the nose, because all these planes are coming back with tons of bullet holes in their nose. And he's like, no, fuselage, no. The problem is you can't they agreed that they needed to put a coating or some sort of shield on, but you can't do that, because when you do that, it changes the airflow, changes the dynamic, it makes it heavier, it changes fuel usage, etc. So he said, no, what you need to do is you actually need to protect a completely different side, because you need to look at what planes are not coming back. So the planes that are not coming back is what you need to investigate and protect. And so if you're getting, bullet holes in your nose and your fuselage, you can take it. That's not the issue. it's the ones that are being shot in the tail. So how are we gonna do that? And it completely revolutionized the way, the planes were protected moving forward. So it's just, there's so many cool stories like that.
Yeah.
Like I could just go on for hours. But,
Yeah.
Okay, we do have about 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that we get to the heart of like, why did you choose speaking and writing a book?
Well, like I said, pardon me?
I said, why those avenues? Why not something else?
Because I do think it's a real problem that we have in this world, and I think we need to figure out how to do better. I mean, there's a lot of other. I could teach branding. I could teach, how to grow corn or whatever it is. But it's that to me is not what's going to change the way we look at the world and accomplish a greater goal. And that's not to belittle anything that anyone's doing, because we need all the parts to work together. But even for the corn grower or even for the brander, I want them to think about, what is the outcome that I want and how can I change it? I want you to think about, when you're doing wheat, like why is it that wheat from certain parts of Italy and certain parts of India have no issues with people who are gluten intolerant? Think about that. Why is that? Why do we, in branding, why do some brands succeed and the others don't? People don't realize that it's about a relationship. That's really the key as to why certain brands succeed and they don't. And there's a whole process thinking. So I just think that there's so much more potential in the world. And to me, it's about how can I best impact that, and something that everybody else or perhaps anybody else is not doing right now, so, or at least not talking about it and doing it, to teach others.
Or struggling to get the mindset and time, right? Time to be able to actually critically think that way.
And I have to tell you, it is hard. Like, it's hard to teach people.
I imagine.
Like, it's not an easy thing. So many examples and so many exercises, but you also don't want to make it boring and heavy, right?
Yeah.
So it depends. You just have to be ready for it, I think.
Okay, so with the 2 minutes that we have left,
where
do we find you?
You can find me. LinkedIn is probably the best place.
Okay.
And so you just look up my name in LinkedIn. And my company is activeingredientsinc.com.
Love it.
And thank you. And I mean, I'm all over social media. I'm not setting up on the social media channels as well as I could and some others, but working on it.
And when's your book coming out?
Hopefully in May. So there'll be a pre-sale.
Okay.
Okay.
So
message me literally right after this.
Okay.
I'll look at it later, but the whole book club conversation.
Yes.
Yeah. So if there was one thing that you could just leave people with to make sure that they took it with them, what would that be?
Stay curious.
Stay curious? I thought you said stake your ears.
Not
what you said. Stay curious. Okay.
It's a Monday morning for you.
Hey, stay curious, my friends.
Yes. Stay curious. Love it.
Yeah. Always stay curious, because that'll get you far beyond your imagining. You're even thinking of right now. So
this was lovely.
Yeah,
Thank you
so nice
so
to
much,
meet you.
Vandana.
so much.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
see you soon.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
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 Great conversation.
Look at all the buttons. Look at me learning as we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Yes, our next guest is here. And I don't even remember where I met her the first time. I want to say it was last week, but I know your face too well that it was probably like last year. It's okay. It's been a complicated year. So Mikkie, welcome. I'm going to bring you up to stage. You have to unmute yourself. There you go.
I'm here.
Welcome.
Yeah. Welcome, Mikkie. Nice to meet you.
So tell us a little bit about you before we get started.
Sorry?
Tell us a little bit about you before we get started.
Okay. I am I work with human design. I live in Southern Colorado. My husband is a science fiction author, and so he's here. We have 5 dogs, 5 cats. And I'm also a board certified behavior analyst. So there's a science meets, should we say, more modern science. because I would argue that human design is scientific in that you experiment with it. You take the information and play with it. So
I love that you called it modern science.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Right?
there's even sciences that are 50 years old, like quantum physics, and we're still not registering it as science. It's like,
do you know,
please.
it's funny that you say that, because quantum mechanics is part of human design. So
Yeah.
yes, absolutely fits in.
Okay. My first, just because I'm curious, I did not know what human design was a year ago. It is something new to me. And when I did it, it's this test. It's resembles a personality test for those who don't know. But then when you get it back, like it looks like this human being outline with a bunch of lines and circles.
Yes.
So tell us, like, what actually is human design? Because it's not just a personality test.
It's not even a personality test, really. It's it takes immovable data, which is your birth information, and performs a lot of calculations with it. It combines Western astrology, the Kabbalah, Hindu Brahmin chakras, the I Ching of the Chinese Book of Wisdom of Chinese Book of Changes, and all of that is wrapped in quantum mechanics. So it's a very complicated process to get that information, hence having websites that do all that work for you, because
Yes.
if you can do it by hand, but you'd be waiting an awfully long time for it,
Yes.
particularly if I was doing it.
Are you not a math girl?
I am. Funnily enough, I have dyscalculia, so I'm totally not a math girl. For those that don't know, dyscalculia is like dyslexia only with numbers. So yeah, no, not me.
That's lovely. Okay, so I do want to start off with understanding the different ways that you like to share your message, and then we'll come in. So, some of the different ways that we talk about are speaking, blogging, being on stages, podcasts, writing a book. Like, there are so many different ways to share your message. What have been some of the ways that you have chosen to share yours?
I love doing one-on-one conversations with people. So if I can get someone on a call with me, I love that. That's my happy space, because then I can literally address what their questions are, what their concerns are. Hot on the heels of that would be doing something like this. I love the conversation. I love the engagement. And if you ask me things, then I know what you want to know. So I can go there. I've just written 2 chapters for 2 different books, and I'm working on a complete book, but that's not ready yet. I love going on podcasts. Don't have my own setup as yet, because I'm basically one woman show at this stage.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be doing a couple of talks. So I have MIT in May, and I'm going to go to Oxford in October.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So then, like, why have you chosen speaking? Why have you chosen the podcast? Why have you chosen to write books? What do they say about you as a person and your human design? Since we can put that in.
It's funny, because there's different reasons for each thing.
Yeah.
So starting with the book, I have a background doing a lot of parent coaching as a board certified behavior analyst. And I find that there are certain things that come up over and over and over again, and sometimes with the same person. Now, I don't have a problem with that, but it just occurred to me that, if I could put all of this in a book, I can just say, this is the information here, have the book, tear the page out, stick it on the fridge if you want to, but, have access to that information, so you don't have to keep asking and, seeking the information. You have it right there when you need it.
Yeah. I like that. And then what about being on stage? Because there are so many people who are still afraid of getting up on any sort of stage, whether it's virtual like this or live and in person at MIT.
There's a whole big story with that. So if I can sort of
Sure.
give you a couple of stories.
Sure.
One is back when I was 18, I was very scared of heights. Like I could not change a light bulb. It was nuts. And it was really bothering me. I lived alone and I needed to change light bulbs and I needed to be able to, leave the ground sometimes to reach something. So I decided, I'm going to jump out of an airplane. That'll fix it. So I did. I went and practiced and, and this is somebody who couldn't stand on a chair. So I kind of lined myself up for that. And I will confess right now that when I did my parachute jump, there was a rather large boot up my backside to get me out the door because I froze. Right? Like I wasn't going anywhere. But obviously I made it. Here I am. And now I can stand on a chair. So it worked. Fast forward to going on stage and doing talks. I'm actually terrified of going on stage and doing a talk, but that's why I'm going to do it. Yeah. So, and if you're going to do something, then you might as well go big. So MIT it is.
Do you teach people, like do you give that example when people are talking to you about what their fears are and haven't been able to, maybe, like you said, stand on a chair to change a light bulb? Do you tell people to go to the extreme of doing something like what you did, or what would you recommend people do?
That depends so much on the individual.
Yeah.
I mean, for some people that will work, and for some people they would just go into complete shutdown.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't just bandy that about as a great option. I think it would be terrible for a lot of people. But for those who just need to do a big thing, then, I have the experience of having done that several times in my life. I mean, I've moved countries, I think 13 times, and this is the 8th country I've lived in.
Oh, wow.
I've been moving since I was 6 months old. I can't say that every time I move, I'm not nervous. Yes, absolutely. I've gone to countries where the language is different, the culture is completely different. So yeah, it's like doing a parachute jump all over again. Do you have that kind of setup for yourself? Can you do that? And if that's terrifying to you, then maybe not. We'll find a more gentle way. And using your human design can be absolutely a guideline for that, because different things work for different people. I know that sounds trite, but literally.
Mm-hmm.
So then what is part of your human design that helps you be that person of just taking the big leaps?
I would say it's the gate of new beginnings, which is, you mentioned in the beginning how it looks like a torso and you've got these, places and then all these links and so on. So putting that into basic terms, so you know what you're looking at when you see it, there are 9 centers which correspond to the chakras. Yes, 2 centers are split into 2, and that's another story, but that's your energy. That will tell you your energy type and how you best make decisions. Linking those centers are those sort of lines, and if they're defined, so they're activated, they're a channel. If they're not, they're just sort of hanging there. The gates, which are the little numbers on all the centers, those are what activate the channels and define a center. So there are 64 of those. There are 64 gates, 32 channels. Like I said, it's very complex.
Yeah.
Very complex. One of those gates, which is gate 53, is the gate of joyful new beginnings. And what that looks like for you at home is a pile of half-read books, maybe projects that are started, not finished. Maybe a wall has been, you've got the color on it, but you haven't finished it yet, and it's been 2 years already. That kind of thing.
Yeah. That
can come from the gate of new beginnings, because you're there to start the thing, but you don't have the necessary setup to continue it. Now, you might have in other parts of your chart, but let's assume for the moment you don't. And so you start this new beginning, and then it kind of filters out. So you could say, oh, well, that's terrible. How do you fix it? You don't fix it. You realize that it's actually a gift, because you can help another person to start a new project, a new phase of life, a new direction in life. Like you can do all sorts of things with that gate. Yeah. Oh, look at you.
Yeah, I was like, if I can find it, that would be lovely. For those at home who don't know, This is just an image of mine. You
Right.
said gate 53? See now, because you described basically part of my life. So
And is it there? Have a look at the root center at the bottom.
it's white.
Okay, so that's not activated, but there are other places where this can come in. Yeah, there are other places where this can come in. So
yeah, right? That's so fascinating.
it is, you know, and that's why I got into it, was because it was fascinating.
So that's where I want to go next. It's like, now that you've told us like why you like to do different things, I've also noticed that there's a pattern of you wanting to get personal with people. It's not just about sharing your message, that you really want to get down to the human level instead of like the tribe or community level. So that was my notice.
Yeah.
So what is it that got you into this work with human design, and what is the other word? I can't think of the other word. Not human potential. It was like why people do what they do.
Okay. Well, actually, there's a story with that as well.
I love stories.
Isn't that a good thing?
That's a good thing.
I was working with a woman who is brilliant at tech. Like, she can do all the things I can't do. I'm really not techie at all. And we had this project ongoing, and it was choppy. It somehow, you know, it's like a gear that's clunking. It just wasn't quite on.
Yeah.
And we were both getting a little frustrated with this. And then one day, this woman who I respect and, you know, admire said to me, do you know anything about human design? And I'm kind of, you know, I have a science background, so I'm sort of looking at her. I've seen it around, but, you know, no, why? And she said, well, would you please just go and get your chart and let me have a look at your chart? Because that's going to help me. And I'm kind of looking at her and all kinds of conflicts going on in my head. And I'm like, well, I trust her, and she's very smart. You know, she's not going to go off on some crazy thing. Okay, fine. So I went and got my chart done. And this was the big piece, was when I gave her my chart, I could watch her reaction. And she sort of, she looked at it for a minute and then said, oh, that's okay, got it. And then she changed how she was doing things with me, you know, timeline for decision making, how she asked me questions, this kind of thing. And suddenly everything was smooth. And I was like, what? Okay, I have to find out what this is. So off I went, and as is my habit, I took a, you know, parachute jump in, and there I was, learning more and more.
You brought it back to the parachute.
I love it.
Like, I don't even know what this is. Let's just dive right in.
Right? Absolutely. Yeah. What happens when I pull on this one or this one? I did that in my parachute jump too. It was very disorienting.
Probably.
Can we talk about human behavior? Because there might be a lot of people watching this that don't really understand, you know, what this is. You talk about a chart. It's new to me too, like the charts. Can you dive into a little bit about this so we can get a better understanding?
That's the word I couldn't remember, was the word behavior. Thank you, Tracy.
Okay.
You got my back.
There you go, Laura.
Okay. So human behavior, it depends on where we're starting as to how I'm going to look at human behavior. So certain patterns will be in your human design, and we can work with those. So for example, if you're a manifestor, then you're somebody who's here to make big things happen, to initiate, and you're likely to forget to tell people what you're doing and where you're going. So we're going to work with that behavior pattern, and I'm going to ask a manifestor to tell people before they go off on their new project, to stop and inform them. And every manifestor I ever tell that to gets upset and says, I'm not asking permission. No, I'm not saying ask permission. I'm saying let them know, because then the person won't feel abandoned or ignored. And it genuinely does come up for every manifestor I ever deal with. So that's a behavioral aspect. Bringing in behavior science is the ABCs of behavior. For example, what is the circumstance that the behavior happens in? What triggered it? What did the behavior look like? What happened afterwards to reinforce it and keep it going? And that's breaking down. You can break down any behavior into that and just look at the parts and say, well, what do you want to achieve with this? And combining the science and the human design together, you can really help people, particularly in areas such as relationships where they might be in a dysfunctional pattern. It's not working and they don't know why. And it's a communication issue usually. That's something that we can absolutely just have a dissection of, have a look at, and then you can see how you want to do it differently. Does that help?
It does, actually. And I'm thinking even just from a business perspective as an entrepreneur, it helps you be able to, if you understand that, you can communicate better with the people that you work with, right? And your referral partners, right? And
Absolutely.
actually yourself, understand yourself so that you can communicate better. So I love it. Let's talk about that chart though, Laura, you had up. Like, I'm confused on this. So what is that? And how do you do that?
There's an awful lot to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so those centers, you see the white ones. Laura, if you want to hold that up for a second more.
Yeah.
Okay, so the white ones are open to influence from outside. So energy will come in. For example, the top two centers, you have the crown and the ajna. The ajna is the mind. So these two centers are, the top one is undefined. You have one gate, the next one is open, so completely open, which means you have a free flow from the environment of ideas that are not fixed and constant for you. Perspectives can change. You can do all sorts of different sort of mental gymnastics, if you will. When you realize it's not fixed, it's not yours, but it's coming in from people in your environment, you can do a lot more with it because you know, oh, I'm not, this doesn't really work for me. I don't like this with my values. I don't have to go there. I can let it go because it's not yours. It's not fixed. It's not constant. The centers that are colored in, those have an energy to them that is fixed and constant. And so you can access it. You can rely on it. And other people who do not have those centers defined will kind of be attracted to you. They'll be drawn to you because you're giving them an energy that they don't have. It does sound complicated, but it's, and it is, which is why, you know, if I'm going to give somebody an in-depth look at their human design, I like to do 3 readings because it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, but it's an amazing blueprint. I mean, when you know how you operate, it makes things so much easier because things that you've been told when you're a kid, don't do this, you're too loud, or you do this the wrong way, that the wrong way, whatever it is. Those things that you've been made to feel wrong about are usually, I have found when I'm working with people, those are usually your strength. And people don't know what to do with it, so they try and squash it. But if you can work with it, that's your key to freedom. That's your key to unblocking those things that hold you back. So we can kind of open up a whole lot of amazing pathways that you can test out for yourself and play with. It's not a case of I tell you this is it and it doesn't move and that's it. You're there forever. It's this is what's here for you. What do you want to do with it?
Yeah.
So how long does it take to get an actual blueprint like that done?
Like I said, my preference is to do 3 readings.
Okay.
I mean, you can generate your chart and then send it to me because I don't see it.
Because like that thing at the beginning was just part of the chart. Like it goes. I know you can't really see it.
Oh yeah.
There we go.
But there's tons. I mean, those 64 gates are very important.
And that's just this much. Like, yeah.
Yeah. No, they're huge. And the depth that you go to, it's like peeling an onion. You get more and more layers.
Yeah.
And when you get to the right down to the middle part, you're just like, wow, now I know what I want to do and how I want to do it.
Yeah.
Wow. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's your blueprint, right? It's your blueprint for understanding and opening up to possibilities for yourself.
Exactly. And here's another level to this whole human design thing is if you have a partner, whether that's somebody you're working with or romantic link or children, you get their charts as well. And then there are interactions that you see that make it really quite an amazing tool. For example, if you are a manifester and your child is a projector, you have to be very careful not to squash that kid because your energy is out here, and they are a more, I was going to say delicate. That's not quite right, but they work differently to how a manifestor is going to work. And if you railroad over that kid with your energy, they're going to have a hard time, and they're not going to.
True. That's
do
like
as well as they could.
with one of my children, because I'm a manifestor and she's so not. And you're right. Communication and just the way I approach it, I've really learned some hard lessons.
Right. So that's where human design and applied behavior analysis can join together. And I work with families sometimes to help them understand each other better.
Yeah.
So, you know, when your child does this, this is where it's coming from, and this is how you can respond, and so on and so forth. So the application is huge.
Yeah. I've been having this, because I mentioned earlier, I like to picture scenes, like videos in my head in order to understand information. And one of those has been a part of the conversation lately about emotions. So when we come across something with a certain emotional stance, let's say I'm going to say I love you. And if I have an open, like I want to hug you kind of physical stance, then you can expect that when I say I love you, that I mean it. But if I'm in fight mode and I'm over here in like a martial arts kind of stance, or I've got a weapon or something, and I say I love you, do you actually feel that? It doesn't matter what my action is or whether or not I meant to have good intentions. If my stance, whether it be my emotion or my personality or whatever it is, doesn't match at that point in time, it can really throw things off.
Totally. Because
Totally.
a huge part of your communication is body language.
Exactly.
So if your body's saying, go away, or I'm going to do bad things to you, and your mouth is saying, I love you, that is a whole lot of dissonance right there. And nobody's going to be able to work with that as it is.
So then this conversation is about understanding which stances other people will understand. So me saying I love you is definitely a hug. Other people I know saying I love you is not a hug.
Yeah.
Again, there's a center I want to look at. I want to see what your solar
I'm a
plexus
projector, by the way.
So I'm talking to a projector and a manifestor. How funny is
Yeah.
that?
Let's see. There you go.
There you go. Oh, wait. There. Which one?
The solar plexus. Aha. Okay. So I'll bet you think you're emotional, don't you?
I am limited emotionally.
Okay. Well, actually, you are not emotional. Your center is undefined. So your emotions are other people's, that you absorb those emotions and amplify them. Those white centers amplify what's around you. So if you've got somebody who's very moody, for example, then you're likely to experience mood swings because it's theirs.
And so I'm very protective of my energy, because I'm like, I absorb language, I absorb energy, I absorb emotions from everyone around me. And so I have to choose where I want to spend my time.
And so when you have an open emotional center, it's important to be aware of who's in your environment. And if you notice that you're feeling fine, today's going great, and then someone comes into the room and 10 minutes later you're just like, grr, all the things are wrong, then that's a time for you to say, hey, how's your day going? You know, what's happening for you? Do you need some help with that? Because it's not you, it's them. And if you want to offload that, you can either help them with it or put yourself in a different environment, but you don't have to stay there. It's not yours.
No, it took me so many years to understand. And if I had just understood this when I was a kid, oh, life would be so much different. And those limiting beliefs that we were talking about earlier that we have learned from childhood, if I had understood this or something about it in childhood, it could have limited the depth of those beliefs that have been harmful in my adult life. It could have guided me in a different way that potentially be a little bit healthier.
You know, it's interesting because a lot of limiting beliefs happen in the first 7 years of life when the brain is in theta brainwave patterns. And it's sort of a time where you absorb all the information and you have a limited repertoire as to how to identify things and know what to do with them. So given the egocentric nature of children, everything is about you, and it means that you're bad or you're wrong, because you're really not working with a whole big lexicon here. You know, it's kind of small, and you internalize that quite literally. It goes into part of your body, and then whenever somebody triggers that, everything comes up, not just the current thing, but everything that you've stored comes to the fore to save you, right? There's a saber-toothed tiger coming from you, and your little you is going to save you. and it's traumatizing all over again, you know. And when you bring in human design, which is one method, there's polyvagal theory, there's a whole bunch of internal family systems. You know, I've studied these as well, and these all have their place. But with human design, you can look at where are the things that I was told were wrong. And manifestors, for example, manifestor children are usually squashed. That is, it's a rare parent that doesn't, because manifestor children are very fast, they're very busy, they don't have the same timetable as you. You know, if you're doing a project that takes 6 months, manifestor is going to give it a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and then they're good, they're done. It's not that they're quitting, they're done. They've got what they need. So time to move on to the next thing. But parents, teachers don't understand what's going on here. This is this wild child. And so the urge then is to just stop them, box them, you know, contain. Don't do that. It's unnerving. I don't know what you're doing. I have no control. It could be unsafe. I'm going to squash you. Now, the thing is, for a manifestor, the sign that you get when you're not in alignment is anger. That is your key. That is your stop sign. That's your flag, anger. And when a child is angry, it's generally not safe to show that anger. Adults don't like it. They get uncomfortable with it. They feel it's a challenge. There's a lot of story around it. And so you're not allowed to express that anger safely. The child then turns that into self-sabotage. You know, don't worry about it. I'll beat myself up. You don't have to bother. And that whole thing gets internalized. What you get is a very angry teenager, and then an adult who has issues with, you know, either anger or self-sabotage.
Yep. Yep. I think you're my new best friend, Mikkie.
And that takes some work to unpack. It's doable, but you need to see where it got blocked, how it got blocked, and then, you know, make decisions about how you want to unblock it.
Wow.
That's the other thing I love about human design is it's not saying that you have to follow this one path, this one rule to heal yourself, to change, transform, whatever. It's here's how it is today. How would you like to express it tomorrow?
And it's, you know, this is what you have that's easy for you to do. This is when you're in flow. This is a skill set for you. This is something that's just easeful. How do you want to play with that? You know, if your creativity flows when you talk, then maybe you want to get up on a stage. You know, if your creativity flows when you talk and you want to deal with a community, do that. Or if perhaps you express it in artwork, perhaps you express it in cooking, you know, like what do you have that you want to do with this possibility? And that can change too. Something that starts off as being a yes can end up being a no, and that's fine. You know, we get this artificial idea of you have to stay the course once you start something or you're a quitter. Well, it's twaddle. I mean, no, it's not true at all.
Yeah.
But it's kind of going back to where we've been talking about is it helps you find your why.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Passion behind what you do, because you're starting to really understand, like you said, your human behavior, right? And then it helps you if you can do that for yourself. Like you said, if you have children or anyone that's in your circle, you can have a better understanding with them.
Oh yeah. I mean, my two sons are projectors, both of them, but they're different projectors, and they share an apartment. Now, what comes into play for them is if you look on your chart, you'll see definition. There can be single, split, triple, or quad definitions. And what that refers to is the number of circuits you have, like loops, in that body graph. And the more you have, the more sort of stages you go through when you make a decision. And my eldest son has one, he's a single definition, and he's just straight line, four centers are defined. So the way he makes a decision is to talk it out loud, not in your head. That doesn't work. But he can say it to a mirror. He doesn't have to have a response. He just needs to talk it out loud. And by the time he's finished, he's golden. He's got it. He's good to go. Got his decision. Knows what he's doing. My youngest has a triple split definition, which means, so he has to go through 3 different stages to make a decision, and to make something, a bigger decision, not what do you want for dinner, but something a little more important. It's going to take him a week. And it used to be so frustrating for the older one, because he thought the younger one was just being difficult, and awkward and whatever else. And the younger one's like, no, I really can't do it any quicker. And he's right, he can't. It won't happen. Wow. If he tries to force it, it will be the incorrect decision, and he'll have to do it again anyway.
That's interesting, because I have a split definition between 2, not 3, but that talking it out really is my first step. I have all these thoughts in my head, and I try to line them up so that I can have a clear, articulate conversation with somebody else that isn't me.
Right.
So I'm not sure if it'll work in a mirror. I have to try that now. So I have that other input.
It's just out loud.
Then
it's working for you. It's an out loud thing rather than in your head. In your head won't work.
Okay. Oh, that's going to be fun to test out. So, Mikkie, we have about 13 minutes left, but I do want to know, how has human design and human behavior helped you in running your business? Start there.
Well, it's basically what I do. So I'm always working on me. That's just self-development is a never-ending thing. I think it's kind of got to be, and it's helped me to understand some things. I mean, believe it or not, I have an undefined G center, which is the center of identity, and it means that my identity, the energy for that, is not fixed and constant. And for years, as I moved country to country, I would be a different person. I would show up differently depending on where I am, what job I'm going to do. I've been a nurse. I've been a Montessori teacher, I've done a bunch of different things.
Wow.
And it's a long list. And at a certain point, you start to think, is there something wrong with me? I keep doing all these different things. This is weird.
Yeah.
And actually, no, it's exactly in my design to do that. It's perfectly correct to do that. And then I also, in my profile, which is the 2 numbers you have.
Okay.
For example, if you have a 2-4, the first number is your conscious number. It's what you're aware of about yourself. Okay. And the second number is unconscious. Other people will know about that before you do. In my case, it's right in my profile that I'm going to want to study all the time. Can't necessarily explain where everything comes from, but I'm going to study. It's what I do for fun. So I ended up with 4 degrees and
wow,
and a hefty dose of imposter syndrome, right? And I realized, I was actually in a doctoral program. So for my 5th degree, I was in a doctoral program, and I was toddling along, and I suddenly thought, why am I doing this? I'm doing it because I can. I'm still trying to prove a point, and I'm not going to use it. Oh, forget it. And I quit, and everybody kind of lost it. They were just, but, you're the 4.0 student. What do you mean you quit? It kind of blew people's minds somewhat.
Yep.
Wow.
Right? But that was in my design. Understanding my design allowed me to do that, because I realized, I'm just repeating a pattern here. I don't need this, actually.
Nice.
So interesting.
I know.
We could dive into we could probably spend all afternoon talking about human behavior.
100%. Yeah.
See, I want to know the list of the 50 different things that you've studied.
Yeah.
Certificates and stuff. Because entrepreneurs are a lot like that as well.
Yeah.
Is they don't know how to express themselves. So they're trying to find all of these tools to help them do that. So they're over here and they're over here. And it just, to them, it feels like a mess, but without having somebody like you, Mikkie, to help them make sense of how they all come together.
Hmm.
What is that relational piece, that thread that makes sense for them?
It's absolutely in the human design. It
Yeah.
really is, because as you go through, I mean, you have to start at the beginning, right? That's
Yeah.
just, it's required. So you get an understanding of your centers and how your energy is. But my favorite part is when you get to the gates and channels, which
Yeah.
is the 64 and the 32,
Mhm.
because that gives you the theme. You know, I've done someone's chart recently. A theme for her was very much self-care, self-love, and creativity through openness.
Okay.
And she was very much fixed on figuring out the how and knowing next steps. And that's exactly wrong for her. It's not going to work. And that's why she's stuck. So, you know, taking a different theme and
Yeah.
knowing when to take a break and that kind of thing was very important to just opening up that energy flow. And again, I tell you these things, you go test them.
Yeah.
Don't take my word for it. You know,
Yeah.
please do not. Science is all about testing and getting repeatable results.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
So good. Everybody needs to go get one of these done.
I want to see everybody's thing, even though I
Yes.
don't understand it.
You know, I find myself, I'm talking to someone and I'm figuring out their design and their probable profile. And you know, it's how I'm doing things. And, you know, if I really think I've got it, I'm going to ask them to go to their chart because I just want to know. They don't have to, but you know,
No.
it's so helpful to know how the other person works, particularly if you're trying to do something, to take it back to that conversation when I explained how I got into it in the first place.
Yeah.
It made such a difference from that clunky sort of
Yeah.
movement that we had going on to something much smoother, and beautiful work came out of it. It was great. And it
So
was fun after
So
that.
question I have for you on it, do you get this done? So you get it done originally, you work on yourself and you're working, do you redo it because the pattern could shift?
Nope.
No?
What the basic information is there. So once you've had a reading on your human design, once you've got that down, and
Mhm.
like I said, 3 gives you the really good overview.
Okay.
Once you've got that, you've got it. What can change is what you do with it. So how are you going to apply that in this particular area of your life? Or how do you want to change things? And so, you know, I do coaching as well based on the human design. And that moves like a river. You know, you're going all over the place. The basic flow of water doesn't change, but what you want to do with it does.
Love it.
It
love
reminds me
that.
so much of the conversation that I have with clients. They're like, how do I word this thing that I do today? Even though I've done these 50 different things, because when I ask people about their story, I do something called the story session. It's to find the emotional thread behind everything that they've done. And that's what relates to their clients. Not the things that they did and the results that they got, but that emotional journey that ties them all together. This is where it feels like the human design comes into play and really matches that emotional journey. This is why you did these 50 different things.
Right.
Understanding your human design will help you articulate why you do the work that you do today and how you have chosen to express that differently, most of the time with entrepreneurs, than other people in your industry.
And it also helps you to feel good about it, because this
Yeah.
is something I find with a lot of people that come to have their design explained, is they're doing a thing, but they're hesitant.
Yeah.
It's like, but am I really okay to do this? Should I be doing this differently? You know, I'm doing it this way. And when you can see that, yes, you're absolutely doing what works for you, that's brilliant. Keep going. There's a sort of, oh, okay, great. I can put that sack of coal down now and keep going.
Yeah.
And you don't have that sort of niggling concern that maybe I should be doing something wrong. You know, and one of my favorite things to tell people is don't should on yourself. It's don't should on anybody else either. You know, if it should, it comes from externally. It's somebody else's opinion. It's not yours.
Yeah. I was no, I lost my thought. It's gone. I'm also trying to coordinate the next person coming in.
Right.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to tell you about my human design. There was one thing that really stood out to me when I had just a brief explanation of what my human design was. There was one part where it said that I should wait to be asked to do
Yes.
something
Yes.
before I put the energy and like go all in and do it. Because every time I would put this huge amount of energy into something, build it and they will come. And then hope that people would be interested, and yet there would be crickets every single time. But if I waited until somebody asked or mentioned, or there was some sort of external, this is the direction we want you to go, and then I went into it, it had a whole other outcome. So, for
Yes.
example, there was a conference that I created after somebody was like, wouldn't it be nice if there was a conference specifically for solopreneurs who understood the difference between small business and what a solopreneur actually needs? And I went, that would be nice. Do you want me to create one? She's like, that would be really cool. Boom, conference.
Cool.
But like coaching programs over the years, it didn't matter how good I thought they were. If I wasn't asked, it never panned out. And every time I was asked, it was panned out.
Wow.
Okay. I am surrendering to my human design. And
So if I can put a slightly different emphasis
sure.
on it,
Yeah.
as a projector,
Yeah.
you can display your abilities for people to see. You can let them know, hey, I am absolute rock star at doing these things. And you can see systems, you can see how to do them better. You can see how to fix the different places.
Yep.
But if you volunteer that, it's going to be perceived as bossy, unhelpful, micromanaging, whatever, put negative terms in there.
Yeah.
But if you just say, hey, check this out. I have this amazing showcase of abilities. And people recognize that correctly, like they really see, wow, Laura's really good at this.
Yeah.
And then they ask you, it's up to you then. Do you want to do that or not? You have a choice. But the thing is, it's correct for you then. It's going to work well. You test it out, you'll find it will work beautifully. But if you volunteer, it's going to end horribly, more than likely.
Every single time. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I had this conversation with my kids too, particularly my eldest one, because he's always volunteering to do things. And I said, no, you know why you're not happy with that? You know why it doesn't work well? Because you're not waiting for people to ask. Just wait. Just wait. And so he tested it out and he said, oh, okay. I don't know why it works, but it seems to work. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
So
it just does. So then, Mikkie, before we ask where we find you, what is that one thing that you really want people to take away from this conversation today?
something I haven't actually said yet. So let's throw something new in there.
Share.
Which is when somebody tells you something about you, you can accept the bits that you like if you want to, but understand it comes from their lens. So what they're saying to you is about them. It's not about you. Yeah. So that's a cause of an awful lot of distress for people, is believing what others say of them. And it isn't actually about you.
Yeah. I used to tell my daughter all the time, it was like, every time somebody says that you're too something, fill in the blank, like too loud, too strong, too whatever, just again, fill in the blank, they're actually identifying your value. It's just they're seeing the other side of it.
Yeah, but they're basically saying what they're worried about.
Exactly.
It's their issue. It's got nothing to do with you. You just happen to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
So then where do we find you? How do we get a hold of you?
Yeah. I am so easy to find. If you look for my name, Mikkie Gaffinstone, you will find me. My website is gaffinstone.com. So that's easy. Facebook, I'm most active on Facebook right now, and Mikkie Gaffinstone, you'll find me there. I am on LinkedIn. I don't do a whole heap there at the moment. But it's on my to-do list. And I'm also on Instagram, but again, not particularly busy right now.
Yeah.
Mostly Facebook and website. I love my website though, so please do go and check it out. It's my happy space.
Yeah.
And there's freebies on there and all kinds of things. There's ebooks, and you can even book a call with me for free and come and talk to me.
Excellent.
It's
okay,
not
see,
free
now I'm
design
curious
reading.
about your website.
Oh yeah, I'm going. I'm going to get my human behavior design.
Oh, when you do, you should send it to me because
I will, Laura. I'm definitely going to do that.
So what did you say your website was? Mikkie the Compassionate Coach?
Nope.
Oh, Gaffin Stone. There we go.
No, the website is gaffinstone.com.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I'm getting lots of messages. Come on, load faster.
You're going to be very busy.
I know.
Cool. Oh, I just
Okay.
want to mention the free call is for exploring what you might want to do moving forward. It's not a free reading. So that's because that is a whole complicated thing, involves a lot of work and so on.
Yeah.
But I am here and ready, willing, and able.
Excellent.
Look, there's you. Cool. I will check it out.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you. Oh, and Laura, to answer your very first question, you met me at the Blue Talks boot camp.
But was that the first time that I met you?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm pretty sure I've seen your face before that. And that's what I'm trying to figure out.
You may have done, but
I don't know.
I'm not sure about
I get around in a playful way. Okay. Well, we will have a conversation behind the scenes. Much love to you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank
that.
you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay, so there is going to be a couple minutes before our next guest. She was just like, I only have a different link.
Oh, okay. What
That's
a
fine.
great conversation. Oh my goodness.
I'm
So interesting.
loving today. I love finding the patterns between the speakers. It's like,
Sure.
what is constantly coming up? What are people talking about? How can each person's work, even though they're seemingly different, how can they interact? Where are those pieces?
I know. It's just like a flow through, right? Like each of them. It's all the pieces of just being better versions of ourselves and working on like what your purpose is, like what is your why and how to build through that and understanding like human behavior. Like that to me is just, like, it must have been so eye-opening for you when you've had that done.
Oh, I was interested in human behavior before then. I used to do architecture.
Okay.
And part of my background was how do I help human beings create habits without them knowing that I'm helping them create healthier habits? So it's like the colors, the textures, the layout, like all of that out of a building from the outside right to the inside finishes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So we have our next guest, Tiffany, who is waiting in the background. Are you good? You ready? Okay. I'm going to bring you up to stage. It was like, just in case you need a minute.
Yeah.
I will make sure you're good. Welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you for having me.
Nice to meet you, Tiffany.
You too.
I am looking at your shelves. I'm rebranding. And I was looking at your shelves. I'm like, oh, okay. So your shelves are like the color of my hair. Is that metal wrought iron underneath?
Yeah, they're just, I think, I don't know, probably got them on Amazon, but they're just like utility sort of hooks that you screw into the wall.
I have a silly question.
Yeah.
Will you take a picture of your shelves and send it to me after?
I will. I will do that. Yeah. Super simple. Barn boards and metal brackets to hang them on. That's all.
Oh,
Love
that's
it.
totally my jam.
Yeah. Thank you.
So now that you're here and we've asked the silly question first, tell us a little bit about you.
So, well, my name is Tiffany Flaten, and I am a board certified and licensed nutritionist. I'm also a certified health coach, and I work with people who have really struggled with their health and are not getting the answers that they need when they go to whatever type of healthcare professional that they seek out help for their symptoms. Just because I had that same situation and I just never really got the full support that I needed to get better. And I kind of had to take matters into my own hands. So, and that happened with after diagnosis of thyroid cancer. And then I started to actually feel a lot worse after what I thought was going to be this kind of miracle change in my health, because now there was an answer. I had cancer, right? So after doing what I was supposed to do for treatment, surgery, and all that kind of stuff, I thought, well, this is great. I'll be better. And I actually got worse. And I still was not getting that support. So then I went back to school. I quit my job and so I could do what I'm doing. And that's kind of where I'm at now. So I'm helping people with similar situations as myself.
Wow.
So
The big C word is definitely
Yeah.
a heavy conversation for many people.
yeah,
I just had surgery a couple weeks ago to help prevent that kind of stuff because it does run in my family. And so I was like,
yes,
no.
yeah,
Yeah. So
it's tough.
it is tough.
Mhm.
Because you already started talking about the why, like why the health and wellness? Why not something related to it? Why specifically the skills that you have today?
Well, I was sort of already in that
Yeah.
vein. And what's kind of funny is that back when I was an undergrad, I looked into getting into nutrition through their dietetics program, which was a very, good program in the area at the time, and I think still is. But there was something about it where I was just like, I don't want to work like that. I just, the clinical stuff that they were doing, and it was all about extreme weight loss and extreme calorie reduction. And with my background in biology and anatomy and physiology and stuff, I don't know, something didn't sit right with me for that. And then so many years later, I had this biology, microbiology degree. I was teaching anatomy and physiology, and I just knew that there just needed to be more. And then that coupled with my own situation where it's like I'm doing what they're telling me to do with the, basics, what seemed like, but it's not enough. And there's got to be more. And there was. So
There's always more.
there's
Like
always way
every time
more.
we learn something and we're like, this is fascinating, then we find out there's 100 other topics that we could explore.
Exactly. Exactly. And I just wasn't, like I already said, I just wasn't getting that support I needed. And I actually was kind of told, just, you're getting older. I mean, that started when I was 22 years old. You're getting
Wow.
older. So just, this is how it is. And you're a female, so you have symptoms every month, and that's just how it is. And you're just, there's really nothing else to do. So just, this is your new normal. Suck it up. And I guess I'm just too stubborn for that. So, yeah.
I was gonna ask, are you actually a natural redhead under there?
Nope, I'm not.
No,
I am not.
you're
No,
not.
so I don't know, because I just knew there had to be something. I was just too young. I was too, relatively healthy to feel like this. It was just so different from what I saw my peers through all my stages and ages. I was like, why is everybody else able to do this, but I can't with my energy levels and things like that. So
Yeah.
And food has such a big, important part in terms of your healing, right? Like just in your energy, your well-being. And I don't think there's, to your point, like there's enough talked about. I think we're starting to go that route, but it's still very much of that medical aspect. You obviously need that to some extent, but I think the food part, if we could be more consistent when even children are younger, it can make such a big difference on everyone's life, right? Healthy
Yeah,
habits.
for sure. And I'm starting to see that with my own kids, because they, came up with me making these changes and doing these different things. And they were pretty young when it started. And I mean, by far, was I not perfect with their food and all that kind of stuff? I'm not going to say that I was, but also just learning over time when your kids are young and how they are now as young adults with regard to food and their health. It is so different from, it seems, from what I'm seeing with their, roommates in college and that kind of stuff. It's a lot different than their counterparts. They're very much in a different mindset about food and health, and it's very different. So, that's a whole nother topic probably, but getting into that where you can teach your kids the difference and how it can be seamless part of health, because we're not going to get it when we're 25 years old and we're going to the doctor because we're tired and feel depressed. We're not going to get that part of it. We need to learn it ourselves. We need our parents to teach the kids to do that for themselves. So that's a whole nother thing that I have worked with before, just coming from a teaching background. I see how kids would eat in school, and it was crazy. And then we're so shocked that their behavior sometimes isn't, on par. So
Actually, I remember getting a letter a couple years ago. I want to say it was after Halloween, which makes complete sense, where it was telling all the parents to please not send your kids with all junk food for lunch, because not only is it not so great for your kids, but it makes it really hard for the teachers to teach the class after
yeah.
lunch. Like, it gets crazy.
Yeah, they're either sleeping or they're bouncing off the walls. And I taught high school, and it's the same for even the bigger kids.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, And it's just, but that's just what people know. And we're bombarded with quick fix, easy things. And I'm not even saying what people have to do is so difficult, or so they have to go to fancy food stores and you have to eat expensive. It doesn't have to be like that, but you just have to know, and you have to start somewhere before you hit your rock bottom. And that's why I named my business too, Rock Bottom Wellness. Cause
Oh, wow.
I was like, I got to help people, because people know when you say I've hit my rock bottom, people know what that means. And I want to try catch people before they actually hit that. But most times, people that come to me are people who have been, I'm their last hope. They've been to several different providers of different types and done all kinds of different modalities. And they've come to me and they're like, this is kind of the last chance I'm giving myself. If this doesn't work, then I guess this is my new normal. And then they're really ready to just do that. But they're not functioning. They're not functioning at all.
I love that you see, part of the work that I do is I help you understand, as I mentioned earlier, the emotional thread that ties all of the things that you do together.
Yeah.
So that when you're speaking to your client, it's not about your skill set to solve their perceived version of the problem. It's you're actually helping them along their journey. So you saying that rock bottom, that really hits to how they feel in that moment. And you being through that, you're like, I already know what that feels like.
Right.
Hitting your rock bottom. I can speak to you on that level. So what does that look like, to elaborate in that rock bottom just a little bit more? What would that look and feel like for people?
It is the people, mostly women, is who reaches out to me, but I do work with men too. But I would say it is, at first and foremost, I am so tired, I can't function. And the way that I only could describe it was like first trimester pregnancy fatigue. That's the only thing that even remotely can explain it. But I would say it was way worse than that. It was way worse than that. So I would say people come to me with that. They come to me with either weight gain or inability to lose weight. And they come with depression or anxiety and or both, like kind of go through the continuum, and aches and pains and poor gut health. So, you can take each one of those symptoms and say, oh, I have leaky gut, or, oh, I have, osteoarthritis, or I'm, premenopausal or even perimenopausal. I'm having symptoms of, the anxiety or the depression or whatever. And we can just sort of explain away all of those things. But the umbrella that we're told so much of the time is, and I hear this still, it wasn't just me however many years ago, it's still, you're getting older and you're a woman and you have hormonal fluctuations and you're a busy mom. Like, just, oh, well, that's just how it is. That's what people get, the pushback that they get. So they don't get help. So those are the people that come to me sort of as, like I said, maybe second to last resort. They're getting close to that rock bottom and they're reaching out and they're feeling all these things. Usually it's one or two main ones, but they all have some aspect that they have now just come to think of them as their normal, and that's just what they're supposed to live with. They honestly think that, oh, you mean I don't have to have joint pain forever?
No, you don't.
So we resolve that stuff down the road without even really focusing on it, but it just all goes together through how I work with people through the programs and processes and stuff.
So then I have an interesting follow-up question.
Yeah.
Because the last few years has been COVID, and then there's this phrase, the new normal. Bleh. Okay, the new normal. How do you feel as though that has affected people's mindsets? Do you see them leaning into that, whether they felt they hit rock bottom or not?
Right. Kind of. I think, I don't know if this maybe is not a direct answer to it, but the way that I have seen it coming through is that people are a little bit more, not triggered, but a little bit more, what am I trying to say? They have more motivation to, okay, I need to get healthy. We went through this whole thing. A lot of people were locked up for quite a while, kind of shut in their houses or whatever, and felt like they didn't have a lot of control. And then there was a lot of fear going around about all of this for various reasons, and for some legitimate, some not legitimate, whatever. I mean, that's a whole, probably another thing too, where people have different takes on how they went through this because of their own health issues or family's health issues. And so I think what it's done is it's sort of catapulted people into saying, you know what, I need to finally get healthy and, get the ball rolling. So I think that, that was one positive thing to come out of COVID and everything that came around with that stuff. So I don't know. That's mostly what I've heard. But I also think the people who probably find me are a little bit more oriented towards that type of health anyway. You know what I mean? Like there may be a little bit more versus, like, I always call it the reactive approach of conventional medicine versus a proactive approach of, like, for me, it's functional medical nutrition. So I feel like I'm getting those people a little bit more oriented that way anyway. So
Nice.
So do you think it's a combination of healthy eating habits and also like a vitamin regimen as well, to help people? Like I again, because I'm in the menopausal period, which is never fun. So I've talked to a lot of women that are in the same spot, and it's just trying to find that right combination to be able to, keep things where you're not so extremely tired, or you're not putting on a lot of weight, or your emotions are more, kind of stable and erratic, right, during these times.
yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. The biochemistry and nutrition go hand in hand, and that's the sort of the missing link when we seek out help. If you were to go to your doctor and say, I'm really tired and I'm feeling emotional, they're like, well, you're menopausal. So, okay, that's just how it
That's
is.
what it is. Yeah.
Rather than going, okay, what nutrients are needed in someone's body to help alleviate those symptoms, or to at least keep you level. So yeah, it's nutrient deficiencies are key. And that is actually one of the main focuses of what I do with people. I look at root cause, cellular level nutrition status, so that when there's holes in that, the levels, meaning like we need to fill in the gaps for whatever specific nutrition. So that's where like a targeted repletion program comes into play. And so yes, you can take a multivitamin just as sort of a broad spectrum approach to keep things stable. But if you're still feeling symptoms, that's where I encourage people to dig deeper and get into some functional testing with that, or at least working with someone who can connect the dots between your symptoms and what you're eating or not eating, and at least get a plan together that way. Also, again, probably a whole other topic, but I'm super picky and kind of snobby, I guess you could say, about supplements, because there's so much garbage out there in supplements, and it's actually a waste of money for a lot of people, depending on what they're buying and where they're getting it. I really recommend people don't do the big box store type supplements, because what's on the label doesn't necessarily have to be what's actually in the bottle. So there's a thing with that. I've seen a lot of kind of horrific things with that. And so that's what I also recommend, working with someone who actually understands the forms and the types and the synergy between the nutrients too. So not to make it overly complicated, but if someone is really struggling there, if they were like, well, I take multivitamins, or I take, whatever supplement, and they're not getting better, it's probably because it's not the right one for them, or the right form, or doesn't fit the situation, or not therapeutic enough. So.
And do you think timing of day, that makes a big difference when you eat as well? Like I imagine you go through that, right? In terms of how many times do you eat? What's the timing? Intermittent fasting, I heard, is what helps as well. What's your thought on that?
So I think timing, and again, it can be sort of different for everybody depending on where they're starting. So if you have someone who is, maybe they're diabetic or pre-diabetic, or I guess even type 2 diabetic, there might be some different rules with that. But if you've got some people that are not, which is who I see a lot too, people who have dysregulated blood sugars throughout the day, but they're not necessarily diagnosed as any of those things I first said, we need to sort of start where you're at and then try to shrink the eating window so that you're eating normally. And I always say to start at like an 8-hour, not even start. Sometimes you start at a 12-hour window and then shrink it down so you eat in that normal 8-hour window. And then you are fasting for 16 hours. So I think it really depends on where you're starting from. I think it's not, I don't think it's practical, and I don't think it's very ethical to just give a blanket statement to everybody should do a, 20 and, eat in 4-hour window and fast in 20-hour window, because that's the best for like fat loss or weight loss or whatever. I think it's kind of irresponsible to do that. So again, start with where you're at and then shrink the window, but then mix it up, because especially if you have a thyroid condition or some other autoimmune condition or have chronic stress, then that's going to be really stressful for the body, and you're probably not going to get the results you want, and you might even tank your thyroid, tank your adrenals, cause more symptoms. So that's kind of what I would say for that. I also think that when you talk about, in particular, the perimenopausal, menopausal type age group of people, and that can start way younger than people think, and it is now in this society, I think, starting way younger than probably ever. But stress management, and I know everybody uses stress as just like, oh, I'm so stressed out, or I'm not causing me so much stress. We're almost so immune to what that means, but it is big. And if that is not addressed through your healing process, or even just probably step one of like, I'm going to make better improvements in my life, I'm going to be healthier, start with managing stress. And that can look different for everybody. But cellularly, with nutrition, that can be really supported with nutrients. And then also just like the lifestyle mindset type of things that people could work on. That's huge with going into balancing your hormones and helping them be able to be balanced. So that's not even a nutrition thing, but it's something that is wrapped into all of my programs and how I work with people. Because if I can tell them to eat, the quote unquote perfect diet and give them the right nutrients that match their tests, but if they're, wigged out all day long, it's not going to really help them that much, or not for long term. So those are the things that, you have to put in place too, besides the healthy foods and nutrients and that kind of thing.
Well, let's talk about the word stress just for a moment.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
it feels like a blanket statement.
Yes.
Like there's these 30 different emotions that we don't know how to identify or classify. And we just name all of them stress.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, if we took a minute to just say, today I'm feeling frustrated. Today I'm feeling confused. Today I'm feeling depressed. Like having actual words, or trying to explore actual words that are more clear, then we actually know which action to take for which emotion. So we're just saying that we're stressed, but yet we're feeling frustrated, adding more things on our plate. Like maybe we'll go to a yoga class to help me with my stress.
Right.
But if that's making you more frustrated, it's just making it worse.
It is. It's like, stop, give yourself a minute to say, okay, what is going on right now? Why is my stomach in knots? Or why do I just feel so short or volatile or whatever? And then what can you do about it? But the thing is, those are sort of lifestyle things. Like you said, maybe I stop and I do a yoga class tonight instead of, binge on like true crime TV or something that kind of causes another kind of stress or whatever, which I'm but look at the things you're doing and replace that. But then biochemically, there are people that are more adept at being able to manage whatever stress comes their way at the root, again, like right at the core of why people can't handle, the people who fly off the handle, or they're the ones that walk into a room and they just, the energy goes up, and not necessarily in a good way, but you just feel tense and anxious around them. They biochemically cannot manage their stress. And then that's on top of, being in heavy traffic, or someone pulls out on you and going fast 70 miles an hour or whatever on the highway, or you're late for a meeting, or all of these things that you just are normal day-to-day things. If you don't have at baseline the right nutrients to help your stress management system out, adrenals and the cortisol production, all that kind of stuff, blood sugars, those types of things, if those are not balanced, then it's really hard to not let everything be stressful to you.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is a perception. People think, well, it's a good stress. Like, I love my job. It's super busy, but it's a good stress. So it's okay. And I always tell people that it doesn't matter if you're planning for a wedding, which would be a good stress, or a funeral, which is a bad stress. Your body doesn't know the difference. It doesn't care. It's still putting out all those chemicals and hormones and whatever to help manage it. And if you don't have the equipment to deal with whatever good or bad stress you have coming your way, you're going to have symptoms.
Yeah.
So, but it's sort of like virtuous to be like, I don't need to sleep very much. And it's just all those
Yes.
things. There's a perception. So that's the other thing about stress.
It's like that badge of honor that said, I didn't sleep last night.
Right. Yes.
Why?
I believe that. Yeah, it's a thing. And what we don't realize is that burning the candle at both ends, we're just not ever really going to be able to help that stress management system. I don't even know if that's the real word for it. That's what I call it, the stress management system, because it's a whole process and it's many parts moving together.
Yeah.
But yeah, that has to be in check for everything else to kind of pull into play.
I think that people, because they're in stress mode all the time, it becomes an addiction. If they don't have stress, they don't know how to manage without having it. So it's almost like they're manifesting, creating more stress for themselves and not working on ways to be able to alleviate it. I've seen a big shift in the business world too, where before it was like, oh, to your point, oh, I only slept 3 hours last night because I almost pulled a whole nighter, and it used to be the hero. When now it's like this shift, like, no, that's actually not healthy for you. Let's get you more balance. So I do think there's a shift on mindset from like that C-suite level to, bringing this down to, okay, let's balance more days for people so that they are more healthier. But, at the end of it, you said, like, it has to come from what you're putting into your mouth, right? Like, what are you consuming? How are you managing that to be the best version of yourself? Because you don't get any younger, right? But you can feel younger if you manage that right from the beginning.
Yes. For sure.
Go
ahead.
No, you're the guest. You go ahead, and then
I was just gonna kind of summarize what we've been saying. That is weaved through everything I do with people from the first the first consult I have with them through my programs, is weaving, sort of reframing their thoughts about stress and how that applies to their specific life. And it's just something that is absolutely a part of it. And it sometimes takes a while for people to get it, because they have the badge of honor. Well, I do all of this and I don't need that much sleep and I do all the things and I don't need help and that kind of thing. So yeah, we're getting smarter with that, I think, though.
The first thing that came to mind was, if we understand stress is just something like inflammation on the body. It's something that we need a little bit of time to process. Trauma is the next step of that. But trauma is any sort of stress that cannot be processed in that moment. So if we're working on it in the moment as it's coming and as it's happening, and we can continue doing that, that's stress. Something that lasts and requires extra time beyond when the event is over, that's trauma. And so we're starting to have that conversation about mental health and realize how trauma truly wreaks havoc on the mind, the body, the spirit, like just all of it. And one of the things that you had mentioned, Tracy, was the looking and feeling younger. One of my favorite things to do with my clients is a selfie, like just a face. You don't even have to show me. I don't care. But just a selfie before we work together, a selfie afterwards. Because one of my favorite things to do is compare. And I have an image of me while depressed, but I felt amazing and beautiful that day. And so I smiled, or so I thought. You can see me here. And then I have a picture of me feeling the exact same way, or so I thought. And I'm smiling, just wearing basic clothes. And I have the two photos beside each other. You can tell a huge, huge difference between them. You actually think that the after photo came 5, maybe 10 years before the before photo. Yeah, like it's intense. I love this. Because it really does show how much stress affects the body, how much our mental health affects the body. Justin is healthy.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I can't remember the person I interviewed, and that's awful to say, but she was on my podcast, and it's on the tip of my tongue, but I'm not going to say it because I don't want to be wrong. But her whole thing is dealing with people with trauma. And it's the whole idea of that trauma like lives in your body. It's like got cellular memory basically. And like you said, if it's not processed and it just keeps coming up and it kind of dictates how you navigate life, that's just not dealt with. And that I deal with a lot of people like that when it comes to food and emotional eating. I'm not a therapist, so I don't dig into that kind of stuff, but trying to reframe against these food rules that we have so much of, when it comes to nutrition, makes it so complicated. But there's trauma with health and food
Yes.
and how we can deal with that. But it's funny you say that. It's funny, but not surprising that you say that you think you're fine. You feel good that day. You like your hair that day or whatever, but you can see it, the change.
Oh yeah.
It's so sad that people don't get that.
It. But yeah, so I want to know, as I'm going to scroll through, I am going to look for it to see if I can find it.
Awesome.
I want to know about how you're feeling today, like after all of this work that you've done on yourself. And we heard about the big C.
Yeah.
How are you feeling today after practicing it?
I'm sorry, what was the last thing you said?
How are you feeling today after practicing this work?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, it was kind of a slow process once I figured it out, because I wasn't feeling good. So it's really hard when you feel terrible to make steps to move forward. But I got one doctor that was helping me with my thyroid medicine, just give me another tool to help see if it would help me a little bit. And it did within a couple of weeks. And then, so it's like the door opened just a teeny bit. And I was like, okay, I'm walking right through that. I know he's not going to help me pass that medication, but I'm going to do the other stuff. And I already had the background in it. And so it was a slow process, but it was on it. Like the initial part was just like mind-blowingly fast. It was within a couple of weeks. I'm like, oh my gosh, this I can get normal, whatever that was. I didn't even know, but I can get normal. And then it just kept on getting better and better and better. So the thing about thyroid disease, cancer, it's removed. And then now I have medication to deal with it. And there's all this other physiology that goes into helping your thyroid. Stress is one of them, just saying, big thing with thyroid. I've had some ups and downs. But regardless of the downs, how bad, and there's been some bad downs, and I recently just came out of a bad down because of thyroid medication changes and availability. And it like when I look back, even I thought I was doing okay, and it was kind of last quarter of 2022, and it was bad news. I was so tired and stuff, but I also knew and did not go down into the deep, dark slump of depression, because I knew I could figure it out and I could get better. I just needed the medication to kick in or the dosing to kick in or whatever. And it did, within probably 6-8 weeks. Before that would have been a whole year of a backslide. So it's been like some 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, that kind of thing. But it's mostly moving forward. And that's the other thing. I think people think that they will do a quick fix solution to whatever their health ailment is, and then everything will just be perfect going forward. Meanwhile, your bodies are changing, your hormones are changing, all these life changes, your kids change, whatever. There's so many things that can affect how we feel, and we need to understand that it's not just a linear process. Like it's not always going to improve. And as soon as you kind of wrap your brain around that, then I think people can keep moving forward. But that's the thing. I had the tools, I've had some backslides, but I don't need 1,000,000% better than I was. It was really, really dark. It was really dark when I was at my worst point. And it's so much better. Even when I have the backslides, it's frustrating. It's annoying. It slows me down. It makes me angry, whatever, all those things. But I know that it will be short-lived and I will come out of it.
One of the things I like to say is, even though we may classify ourselves as an expert in something, I have a background in mental health as well, but just because I have that expertise does not mean that I am immune to the things that I teach.
Right.
Just like everything that Tracy does and that you do, Tiffany, we're not immune. We're just like everyone else.
We're humans.
But we have the tools and we have the experience to recognize it sooner, to get the help that we need. We know where to find it, who is actually helpful, what actually works for us. And so we get through it so much faster and easier. I did find that photo, by the way.
You did.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to find. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
There.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think there's 4 years in the difference. But when I look back at that photo and I remember feeling amazing that day, and I went, No, I can see it in my own eyes. Like the depression is just
Mhm.
yelling at me through
Yes.
my eyes. It wreaks
Yes.
havoc.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and people can see that. They might not
Yeah.
know what it is or whatever. And that's kind of the hard thing about getting healthy too,
Yeah.
is that you know how you feel. Like in the opposite, I knew I felt horrible, but people are like, "Oh, you look great. There's nothing wrong with you." You know, I know people that have gone through that and it's no big deal. And so then you second guess and you think,
Oh.
"Oh, I guess I'm just a hypochondriac, or I'm just looking for attention. You know, what is wrong with me to want this in my life?" But then you fake it till you make it. And that's kind of what you were doing maybe in that picture when you just felt good. You didn't know you were, you know,
Oh, I knew I was depressed at that
yeah,
point. It's just that particular day, I felt really pretty. I felt happy. But I'm like, if that is the happiest
yeah,
and the most pretty that I could feel at that point in time. And on that day, I just felt good. It was just
yeah,
like I had good hair. I came back. That was it. Nothing special.
yeah. But it's the little something.
Wow. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, Tiffany, we have about 9 minutes left. So I want to make sure that we understand like, what is this one big message that you need people to take away from this conversation?
Oh, that's easy. I just talked about it at Stanford actually.
Oh, nice.
My topic of my talk was drink before you're thirsty.
Ooh.
So
Yes.
I could, when I was, putting my talk together, I went through all these times in my life,
Mm-hmm.
like just chunks of time, back to childhood where I had this amazing childhood and all these resources and like kid things, horses and a farm and travel, things like that.
Yeah.
Just being a kid. But I was sick and tired. But I did not that sick and tired. But I shouldn't be the 6-year-old that wants to go take a nap during family celebrations because I have a headache and I feel tired. But I didn't know that I didn't know enough to drink before I was thirsty, that kind of thing. Then we jump into different categories of my, age groups. And it's like, I didn't know that I could drink before I didn't know to ask questions. I didn't know to push back. I just did what I was told, or I just accepted, you're getting older. I mean, on some level, I accepted it because I didn't know where else to turn. And the bottom line was there was I think it was prior to the thyroid cancer diagnosis, the doctor that found the lump on my thyroid said, this is not really a big deal. Like 98% of these are benign. But I want you to go to this endocrinologist. It'll take you about 6 to 8 weeks to get into him. And I was like, no, I'm not waiting that long to see what's going on, because now I can see it in the mirror just by looking in the mirror. I can see this lump. I am not waiting that long. So I drank before I was thirsty. And that's sort of when I started to see that I was making changes faster by speaking up for myself, self-advocating. And I even went against a huge medical system in my area as far as I did not stay with them and just do what they told me I was supposed to do, that this is how you treat thyroid cancer. This is how you do it. Just suck it up. It's the way it is. And I quit them. I fired them. And you wouldn't believe the pushback I had from, family, friends, whoever, just because how would you not go there anymore? So I drank before I was thirsty. And I just did this all along the way. And I can't even tell you how bad I felt. I didn't care if I woke up in the morning. I would wake up and go, oh, how am I going to do this? Like, I don't know how I'm going to get through the day. And I still had it in me that I had to take charge. I had to drink before I was thirsty. So that's my big overarching message when it comes to your health. You can apply it to anything in life, really. But it's that whole thing about no one's going to, worry about you. You need to worry about yourself. And, however people phrase that, that's what you need to do.
It's like what they say about when you're in the airplane, right? And it's going to crash. Put your oxygen mask on first before you put it on the person beside you, right? That's what you did.
Exactly.
Right? And you saved your life, right? Like you saved your life, right?
It did. Because like I said, it was so low. It was so bad. Because it was so hard it was hard to shower. And I know that because I had the depression too.
Yeah.
And it was diagnosed with that too. But I think mine came from a different place biochemically. And, I get that. You just like showering. Are you kidding? Going to work, looking at my kids' planners from school and helping them with homework. And then now I have to cook dinner, go to the park. It's like, how am I going to do this? Like, how can I make it through the day?
Yeah.
So it was bad, but I still had to do that. So that's what I encourage people to do. And they can do that by reaching out to the right healthcare practitioner, whoever's going to help support them, therapist, doing their own mindfulness, stress management. Just do something, take action. Just do something. Yeah.
So then I invite everyone here and everyone at home to grab your closest thing of water.
Exactly.
And take a drink right now.
Literally and figuratively, drink before you're thirsty. Yes.
Exactly. This is a reminder, like while we're here talking about it, to literally drink your water.
Yeah.
Which is also good for you, which is something I always forget.
Yes, I know, it's easy.
Because it's behind me. I don't see it. It's
yeah.
So important. So then, Tiffany, how do we find you?
I can be found at rockbottomwellness.com. So it's pretty straightforward. Or Tiffany Flaten Health on Instagram and Facebook. And then I have a group called the Fatigue Fix. And that's a free group. That's, just giving guidance and education and that kind of thing. I'm former teacher. So I'm big into education. So I like to explain things to people there and recipes and just give support there. So, and that's where some exclusive offers are getting. So the Fatigue Fix on Facebook, Rock Bottom Wellness is my website. And then Tiffany Flaten Health, Instagram and Facebook page. So
nice. Do you have a favorite food? I want to know just because we're here.
I would probably eat pizza every single day if it was healthier for me. Because it's not something I like to moderate. I really like pizza. Yeah.
You haven't tried to modify it a bunch of times?
I have. It's just not the same. There's a few franchises around here. I'm not sure where everybody's at, but where you can get the gluten-free options and stuff that are actually pretty tasty. But just in general, I'd rather make it at home. It's actually tastes better. And I don't know. That's the other thing that changes when you start eating better in general. It's not like I never eat out, but you start to realize that food cooked at home is way better tasting usually. So,
let me ask you, are you gluten-free?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. It's a big difference, eh?
Yeah, it is. And, here's my thing. Do I think everybody needs to be gluten-free? No. But do I think everybody should eat gluten-free? Yeah. It's because it's just so inflammatory. And yes, there are some nutrients that we miss by not eating wheat-based products, but we can get those from a lot of other things too. And, do some tests, for people who are not sure, you can do some testing. I'm not saying you have to go have the biopsy, which is very invasive. You can do like stool testing and find out if you have antibodies and stuff to it. And that can be telling, and it can really be helpful with your healing process for sure.
So then do you have any final comments before we say goodbye?
I don't think so. Just drink before you're thirsty. Reach out if you need support. Yes, reach out.
I'm going to do it every time you say it.
There you go. It could be like a game, right?
Yeah.
I also published a book, Rock Bottom Thyroid Treatment. So you can get that on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. So, actually, yeah, it's up here. I don't know if I should.
You're like, I don't want to ruin my shelf. Here we go. Yeah, we got to see the cover.
There you go.
Look, you're on the cover. Great.
Yep. So I published that July of 2020. So turned out like not the greatest timing for doing, a big launch or whatever. But that gives a really good, it's just really good insight of just, again, drinking before you're thirsty and making it simple and not so overwhelming, because we feel like we feel like garbage when we're in this situation. So it's supposed to be simple and doable.
So I want to thank you, Tiffany, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you
for having this
having me.
conversation. Yeah.
It was awesome. Thank you so much.
So good. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so here's our goodbye. Yes. See, look, I'm going to get us right on time. I'm so
there you go.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. As you've noticed, we switch it up a little bit between different people that we're interviewing. Tracy, thank you so much for asking questions and really just being in that space of curiosity with me.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Laura. It was amazing. I learned I've got notes here.
Good. Okay. We really like to end with what was a couple of your favorite things that we talked about today or that really hit you.
I mean, there's so much, right? But I mean,
Yeah.
I think if I look at the big thing for me, as you know, is probably I'm going to tell you is a human behavior. Like I honestly, I think that's going to be a game changer. Kind of your blueprint to everything for your being and how to interact and how to understand yourself and how to be a better version for yourself. I think everybody brings a great element. What's your why? Like really figuring out your why and then working on that process, right? How do you be able to get to where your goal is going to be? I mean, what I loved about all four of them is it's again serving and supporting people.
Yeah.
It's making the world a better place.
Yep.
And how can you not love that on a Monday morning?
I know, right?
Yeah.
My biggest takeaway really is the people that Corey brings into the Blue Talks community are those heart-centered people who want to treat human beings like human beings.
Exactly.
And their business is about service. But then you see that, and they are so willing to share their stories in the way that they share them. And I also love that, like, we all have that 50 different things that we love, and we try to pile it into one thing. It's kind of fun.
And you know what? One of the biggest things too is they all have books. So when you think you can't write a book, all these ladies wrote a book. You can do it.
Yeah. Well, we did just happen to have all ladies today, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Do you have a book? You have a book, Tracy, right?
I've co-wrote some books and I'm in the
Yes.
process of finishing my book. So I never thought I could do it. You sit in the back like, no, I'm not worth it. I can't do it. This is not something.
Yeah.
But, Corey helps you work through that and look at all these amazing ladies. Like you aspire to it, right? So it's kind of jumping off, out of the plane,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's what you got to do. You got to take
Let's
that leap
do
of
it.
faith and write your book, right?
So the leap of faith is to join us tomorrow.
Yes.
Same bat time, same bat channel. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern to 1 p.m. Eastern, which is 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for me. So it's all good. Love you all, and I will see you tomorrow. Much love. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, no, my screen.